Chapter 2020. Kill Stella. Support Scarlet Blaze Tower Master, kill him. All of a sudden, the internet was surging with emotions. Of course, there wasn't much of a wave. After all, the entire world's network was connected together at this time. Kill Stella. Old Q, what are you doing? Auntie Rin squinted at this time. Aren't your wives all two-pronged ape characters? Seems like it. Old Q suddenly opened his mouth, then shook his head and continued, kill Stella. He's hopeless, this guy. Auntie Rin had to shake her head. Her attention was quickly focused on the martial arts stage. Over the past few days, this talkative priest had been very popular, especially when Father Stella and the owner of the Crimson Blaze Tower were about to fight each other several times, but they were pulled away by the Shenzhou administration and failed to fight. He had long whetted the audience's appetite. They thought that in this power conference, the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master would come out first, but they didn't expect the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master to hold back until now. The Magician Association and the Church. Auntie Rin was thoughtful. The so-called magic and faith. Magicians are magicians and witches, they seem to be suppressed by the Church in the Middle Ages? Sister Rin, what are you muttering about? Ren Xiling shook her head and didn't answer. Watch carefully. On the martial arts stage, looking at Father Stella's proud appearance with his arms akimbo and chest out, the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master was really spitting fire. A flame was burning above his head at this time. The temperature was rapidly rising at this time. Waves of heat swept around and began to spread with the martial arts stage as the center. The huge power conference venue seemed to have become a red world. Why the F***CK did you use so many special effects? Father Stella said disdainfully at this time. Don't think that you can act cool just because you have more funds than me. Let me tell you, for a budget warrior like you, don't ever think about being shown on the big screen. You can only live as a cameo in third-rate web dramas. Stella. F***CKU. Father Stella immediately covered his ears. I'm already very good to you. Don't think I don't know that you've been accumulating energy since this morning. If it wasn't for the fact that you handed me a roll of toilet paper when I took a dump at the headquarters of the Magician Association 60 years ago, you would still be living under my shadow. Hurry up and kneel down and call me Daddy. The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master didn't say anything, but the temperature in the air rose once again. Stella wasn't wrong, he had been accumulating strength all this time. But it didn't start this morning. It started last night. His fire magic had always been on an extremely difficult path. He wanted to inscribe fire magic patterns into all of his cells. This was a crazy idea that even the first pagoda master, Hui Yao, had a headache when he saw it. How many cells were there in the human body? The Scarlet Inferno Tower Master had engraved all of his cells into a magic spell. This was the rhythm of turning himself into a fire elemental. But no matter what, this crazy idea had indeed brought Scarlet Blaze terrifying strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to sit firmly in the position of the Magician Association's Pagoda Master. Moreover, he was the second Pagoda Master. When Scarlet Blaze activated all the cells that had been engraved with the spell, in terms of pure destructive power, it had already surpassed the various conventional means of the Radiance Tower Master. But this state also had a drawback, and that was that the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master needed a long time to activate and connect all the cells that had been engraved with the spell. Let's fight. Stella. On the martial arts stage, the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master roared and spat out lava fire. In just an instant, the entire martial arts stage was directly melted by the blazing temperature into a state of magma. Even the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's entire body had turned into a magma giant. A magma giant more than 5 meters tall. Come on. Let's have fun together. At this time, Father Stella directly held the sacred sword of physics in his hand and smashed it towards the magma giant without saying a word. Boom, 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 boom. It didn't have as many skills as the warriors of Kelowna, and it didn't have any fist-intent realm. Every collision was so simple and unpretentious. It was just a collision of pure strength. Every time they collided, the earth would tremble. Sparks flew everywhere on the martial arts stage. The vitality that splashed out from the magma giant transformed by the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master directly evolved into a raging fire the moment it landed on the ground. The temperature of the air could even evaporate a person's sweat in an instant. That's it. That's it. That's it. Scarlet Blaze Turtle. You haven't made any progress in 60 years. Hurry up and call your Radiance Daddy here. Stella. You forced me. With a loud noise that shook the entire sky, endless fire elements gathered in the sky above the conference of strength. In the sky, a cloud of fire with a range of thousands of meters was formed. The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master, the magma giant, at this time became bigger, bigger, bigger. It exceeded the height of the stands in an instant, but it was still growing. 100 meters. The magma giant transformed by the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master had actually reached a height of 100 meters, just like the god of fire in the legends. Such a huge magma giant, with a raise of its hand, it could directly crush the conference of strength. Damn it, Stella. After so many years, can't you just sew your mouth shut? On the stands, the Ice Tower Master's face suddenly turned cold. You know Scarlet Blaze's temper. Do you want to see him self-destruct before you're happy? Self-destruct is good. Father Stella squinted his eyes and said, My confessional black room loves to take in people who haven't died yet. The Ice Tower Master's face turned ashen. What is that? But at this time, a scream sounded in the several kilometers long cloud of fire in the sky. In the sea of fire, a terrifying fireball condensed, like a meteorite falling. Scarlet Blaze Old Man. What the hell are you doing? The true dragon of the divine land roared as he turned into a beam of golden light and shot out. Today, whoever stops me from killing this slut, I'll kill that person. However, the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master, who was in a state of extreme anger, no longer hesitated. The magma giant raised both of its hands and made a throwing motion. The huge meteorite in the sky directly accelerated its falling speed. Shinryu of Kelowna instantly trembled with anger. She couldn't watch this destructive thing fall to the ground. Shinryu's eyes suddenly sank. Your Excellency Shinryu of Kelowna, this is a challenge between Stella and the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master. They haven't decided a winner yet. It's not appropriate for you to suddenly interrupt like this. Could it be that this conference you're holding is a child's play? Long Shirua lowered her head. However, she couldn't find the source of this strange voice among the many transcendent. Sneaky bastard! Long Shirua secretly cursed in her heart. She directly snorted coldly. I'm not your nanny. With that, Shinryu of Kelowna waved his hand. In an instant, the media in the stands were surrounded by golden light balls and were directly taken away by the golden light balls, flying a distance of more than 1,000 meters in an instant. This time, Shinryu of Kelowna didn't set up a golden light wall to protect the people, but only sent away the media, who were just ordinary people. If you have the ability, then live. I don't care anymore. With that, Shinryu of Kelowna flashed and appeared in front of the media, watching coldly. The meteorite was already above the people's heads. How many people could survive such a crazy attack from the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master? The pinnacle of transcendence, the strongest in the world, the strongest was a kind of level, the so-called destruction of heaven and earth. This was the moment. When the meteorite landed, they realized that this meteorite was actually so huge. However, without the golden light wall of Kelowna of Shinryu, they could only rely on their own abilities to defend against this attack. Although the target of the meteorite was obviously Father Stella, how could they survive such a huge meteorite? Damn it! Who was the bastard who was being sarcastic just now? If you want to die, then die by yourself. Don't drag me down with you. Don't let me find out who you are. I'll curse you 3 times a day. Every time I queue up, I'll be cut in line, I'll roll in bed, I'll have diarrhea, I'll knock my toe when I wake up in the morning. You're still talking so much, run. When the meteor landed, the weaker transcendents could no longer be bothered to watch the battle. They all rushed out from the stands. They couldn't block the power of the meteor, but they could run a few kilometers or even farther in a short period of time without any problems. Even so, facing the threat of the meteorite, there were still many people who stayed in place and watched this shocking battle with a solemn expression. All of you, come behind me. Fire Cloud Evil God said indifferently at this time. The investigators who were standing guard around the venue rushed to the back of the Fire Cloud Evil God as fast as they could. At this time, a huge bone knife was suspended in front of Fire Cloud Evil God on the blade. There seemed to be a roaring tiger. Huh! Fire Cloud Evil God frowned at this time. Elizabeth, come to me. The Ice Tower Master said indifferently at this time. At the same time, a light blue light curtain slowly rose at this time and enveloped all the representatives of the Magician Association. She had no other choice. After being together with Scarlet Flame for so many years, Scarlet Flame in this state couldn't persuade her at all, unless Scarlet Flame's magic power was exhausted. That is. The Ice Tower Master suddenly frowned slightly. Not many people from the Tao sect left. They all took out their magic weapons, as if they were facing a great enemy. I didn't expect that there would be such a person in the barbarian land of the outskirts. That mystical young man Martial Uncle Lou snorted at this time and pinched a sword seal with his fingers. Instantly, dozens of light swords appeared in front of the people of the Tao Sect Association and turned into a huge sword array. This person. The mystical young sword immortal subconsciously looked in one direction at this time. In the sky, a figure appeared out of nowhere. It was a guy wearing strange clothes. Martial Uncle Lou quickly found an impression of this kind of clothes in his memory. This seemed to be the uniform worn by a person called a firefighter in human society. The meteorite was about to fall. Most of the transcendents who didn't have the ability to survive this kind of destruction had already left, but not everyone was able to leave in time, because after a whole day of fighting and challenging, a portion of the transcendents were already exhausted. Some were even injured and were currently lying down. They had no way to move themselves in time. It seemed that they could only watch the meteorite fall. Despair could not help but appear on the faces of the injured. However, at this time, a figure wearing a firefighter uniform appeared in the sky. Everyone, if you can get up, then get up. I might not be able to resist it. A solemn voice came from this guy wearing a firefighter uniform. At this moment, he slowly opened his hands, and in a split second, the 8 grandstands were actually wrapped up by a layer of invisible force. The instant this invisible force appeared, everyone was pleasantly surprised to find that the pressure brought about by the meteorite had actually been reduced by a huge amount. This guy is he stupid. In the distance, Kelowna Shinryu was about to leave after taking away the media in a fit of anger. However, she was startled and then sighed softly. When she saw the figure in the firefighter uniform, Kelowna Shinryu found that her anger had mostly disappeared. When everyone tried to protect themselves and left, even she was angry. Only one person stood up bravely. Emo Xiaofei. Because of various reasons, the young man who finally became her disciple. You're always like this. Long Shirua sighed softly. Don't you know that the more you act like this, the more he likes you? The true dragon of the divine land let out a bitter laugh and finally heaved a sigh of relief. He slowly raised his hand, ready to smash the meteorite into pieces. Miss Long, don't you believe him? Suddenly, the concerned voice sounded in her ears. Long Shirua was startled at first, then she clenched her fists and struggled for a while. Finally, everything turned into a sigh and slowly hung down. You're not allowed to lay your hands on my disciple. Kelowna Shinryu gritted her teeth and said with a trace of decisiveness. Okay. If you lay your hands on him, What? Kelowna Shinryu opened her mouth and eyes wide in disbelief. What did you say? I said, okay. The gentle voice, like a light breeze, sounded in Kelowna Shinryu's ears and fell into her heart. She subconsciously asked, why? Why? Because if Miss Long has hatred in her heart, she won't be beautiful. Bang 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 bang. Although she clearly knew what the word beautiful meant, Kelowna Shinryu's heart still beat hard. Why are you still flirting with me at this time, you damn it? Tut! An invisible force covered the 8 spectator stands, completely blocking the aura of the flames outside. However, facing this falling meteorite, Mo Xiaofei didn't have the confidence to completely resist its impact. Not to mention the explosive power after the meteorite fell. It was not because he wanted to show off, but because he wanted to. There was no reason. When the meteorite landed, there was only one thought in his mind. Block it. Bro, you block the first wave, leave the second wave to me. Suddenly, Mo Xiaofei heard a voice behind him. He subconsciously looked back and saw the young Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain. You are. Mo Xiaofei opened his mouth in surprise. Since you've seen it, just save it. Momo chuckled. Saving what I've seen will make me feel at ease. Saying this, the young Taoist master of Dragon Tiger Mountain took a deep breath, using his hand as a pen to draw a talisman in the air. 8 huge edicts were rapidly generated on the 8 stands. Thank you, Mo Xiaofei said seriously. You're welcome. Momo smiled. Treat me to a meal. I'll treat you. Mo Xiaofei nodded. Brother, you won't take me. At this moment, a small figure jumped up high, looking like a golden man under the support of the star power. However, Zhuefeng's cheeks bulged. Mo Xiaofei smiled, touching Zhuefeng's head. Then let's go together. Miss Maid looked at her master at this moment. A long time ago, her master casually scattered some seed. Now, these seeds had sprouted and grown into good-looking saplings. In the future, Boss Luo said softly, they will become stronger in the future. Their treetops can turn into cool shadows, and their trunks can support the next generation. Yes. Stella! That was a roar that had completely lost his mind, shaking the entire sky. The meteorite fell. The billowing heat wave instantly burned Father Stella's beach shirt. At this moment, the priest inserted the physics holy sword into the ground, clenching his fist. He blew on his fist, and then punched out. Me. Invincible iron fist, Stella. The priest shouted, Red Flame Turtle, I've returned the favor of the toilet paper that year. Boom! The fist directly hit the huge meteorite. Instantly, the earth was shattered. Instantly, the entire meteorite collapsed. Numerous magma wrapped around the boulder, splashing crazily. The wind from Father Stella's fist rushed up to the sky, breaking the sea of fire instantly. Finally, the strong wind from the fist split Earth's Jun Xiaoxiao's hair. Chapter 2021. The clouds were broken, and the blue atmosphere appeared in front of the world. However, what happened at the Conference of Power couldn't be transmitted immediately. Because the live broadcast was cut off when Scarlet Flame Tower Master started his crazy attack. This is the transcendent power. This is the real transcendent power. The media was behind Kelowna Shinryu. They were well protected, and even the fist wind that broke through the clouds couldn't disturb them. But at this moment, they truly felt the horror of the transcendent power. The transcendent masters on the stage were very powerful, and some of them even gave people the feeling that they could destroy a big city by themselves. But no matter how powerful they weren't as shocking as Scarlet Flame, the Magician Association's Tower Master, who summoned a meteor to fall down. At this time, the shattered meteorite was scattered in all directions, like the flint released by a volcanic eruption. With the Conference of Power as the center, the area within a radius of 10 kilometers was mercilessly hit by the firestones. Kelowna Shinryu frowned. He waved his hand and thousands of golden lights shot out, shattering the firestones that fell to the ground. What are you waiting for? Take pictures. Slap them hard. The furious true dragon of the divine land said coldly, "These are all evidence. I want to collect the debt from the Magician Association." The media, no matter which country they were from, kept quiet out of fear. They all raised their cameras and took pictures of the doomsday-like scene in front of them. The force of the impact was extremely terrifying. No matter if it was the powerful fist wind or the power released by the explosion of the meteor, the 8 grandstands remained intact. The 8 edicts of the little celestial master of Dragon Tiger Mountain were shattered, and the invisible force that covered the grandstands had dissipated. The 3 figures who stood out bravely when the meteor fell and swept the snow in front of their houses had disappeared. But without a doubt, whether it was Momo, the mysterious guy in the firefighter's uniform, or the young man who called himself Zhuifeng, they all left a deep impression on the audience. In the end, we still cherish our lives. 100 Tribulations Taoist master clasped his hands together and shook his head. The young sword immortal, martial Uncle Lu, did not think much of it. The heavenly Tao was merciless, and every man for himself would be destroyed by the heavenly Tao. The Tao he walked was such a Tao. Even if a human saint stood in front of him and criticized him, his will would not be shaken. However, Father Stella's shocking punch that shattered the meteorite still made this young sword immortal's expression somewhat gloomy. He had already passed the final heavenly tribulation, but his immortal path had long been severed. After this heavenly tribulation, he could only be an earth immortal at most, which was almost the end. Could it be that there is a path beyond this? The sword immortal youth looked straight at the martial arts practice platform. In fact, after that terrifying attack, although the 8 great viewing platforms were preserved, apart from that, there was nothing left of the assembly of power. The earth shattered and magma flowed in the cracks. It was like the scorched earth of hell. The blazing aura caused the air to constantly distort, and the air was filled with the smell of burning gunpowder. Father Stella just stood there. The undershirt with the picture of a beauty on it was not damaged in the slightest, but more than half of his underwear was already burnt. The sandals he was wearing were probably bought cheaply, and had long melted. The lava giant also shattered, and the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master returned to his original appearance, only a pair of underwear that barely covered his body. However, his whole body was still scarlet red, like a straw hat. The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's gaze was still not right, as if it had lost its focus. Suddenly, the sound of air breaking rang out, and the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's figure disappeared in an instant. What replaced it was the earth that instantly shattered. At this moment, Father Stella did not speak nonsense, and clenched his fist and swung it out. In this way, Father Stella and the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master did not dodge at all, and directly bombarded each other with their fists. The sound of the explosion was deafening, and every blow could always hit a large number of sparks from the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's body. It was like hitting a red-hot iron embryo. In the distance, the Transcendents who had fled far away because of the meteorite were now watching from a distance. After seeing the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's terrifying means of summoning meteorites, they knew that they were only at the lower level of the world's standard. How could they dare to approach again? They did not dare to move, they did not dare to move. The collision between the priest and the Tower Master had already exceeded hundreds, reached thousands of times, but there was still no sign of stopping. However, as time passed, one would find that the scarlet red on the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's body gradually dimmed, and the hot steam released from his body became more and more intense. The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master can't hold on anymore. Fire Cloud Evil God frowned at this moment. This Stella is more powerful than I thought. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud noise, and the clash between the priest and the Tower Master finally stopped. And at this moment, Father Stella's fist impressively bombarded the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's chest. Right in the center of his heart. The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's body froze. His fist was about to strike, but it didn't. It hovered in midair. You can go in peace, Father Stella said with a rare seriousness at this time. I will take care of your wife. You motherf asterisk cur. Hey, you're actually not dead yet. The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master, whose eyes were originally scattered, like a wild beast, crazily bombarded Father Stella. At this moment, his eyes focused, and just as he spoke, he directly vomited a mouthful of hot magma. Father Stella instantly retreated with a look of disgust and said angrily, Scarlet Blaze Tortoise, you can't beat this priest, but you use this kind of trash trick? You haven't seen the power of this priest's ultimate bladder sword cannon. Stella! The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's whole body was red, and after vomiting a few mouthfuls of magma, his whole body was weak and on the verge of collapse, but he forcibly held on. But seeing the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's face at this time, the priest directly pursed his lips and sneered, planning to shoot his mouth again. At this moment, shut your stinky mouth. A cold current, at this moment, instantly poured down on Father Stella, freezing this priest into a human stick. But the thick ice crystals shattered again. Father Stella at this time, shivering and rubbing his arms, the Ice Tower Master, wearing a blue dress, had already appeared in front of the priest expressionlessly. Father Stella retreated again and waved his hand, saying, Other than in bed, I don't hit women at other times. The Ice Tower Master at this time stared at Father Stella, her face gloomy. You destroyed Scarlet Blaze's ultimate flame technique. Isn't it good to be a human? Father Stella shrugged. Anyway, even if I'm not a human, you can't beat me. Just be a human and then be a human. If you can't even do this, then I'll take a loss and help you out a little? The Ice Tower Master trembled with anger. Father Stella used White Crane spreads its wings on the left and Twin Dragons rises from the sea on the right. He wasn't afraid at all and looked like he could continue to enjoy himself. The Ice Tower Master suddenly sighed. For this round, the Magician Association admits defeat. Saying this, ignoring Father Stella's reaction, the Ice Tower Master turned around and helped the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master up. I can still fight. Shut up. With a cold shout, the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's mouth was sealed by ice, and then his whole body was covered by several ice rings, and then he was carried away by the Ice Tower Master. In the tunnel inside the stands, the ice rings cracked, and the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master supported himself against the wall and once again spat out large mouthfuls of magma. Damn! Stella actually destroyed all the flame spells on my cells. This enmity, I'll definitely... A gentle palm pressed against the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's lips. He subconsciously lowered his head and met the Ice Tower Master's gaze. Just like he said, isn't it good to be a human? The Ice Tower Master faintly said, You even want to engrave a warlock in your heart. Do you really not want to live? You pursue the ultimate truth of flame warlocks. I don't care about you, I support you. But you want to abandon me in pursuit of this so-called truth, so I can only accompany you. Now that your ultimate flame spell has been destroyed, if I say that I'm very happy, would you hate me? He's not that kind-hearted. The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master clenched his teeth and fiercely punched the wall, hatefully saying, I shouldn't have taken a dump with him 60 years ago. The Ice Tower Master gently grasped his fist and silently looked at her husband. The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master sighed, I've really lost this time. It seems that I really need to re-examine the path I've been taking all this time. The Ice Tower Master's gaze suddenly softened. The will of the subworld didn't descend. On the stands, the young Miss Hermit of the Secret Society suddenly frowned and looked at Teacher Poulin. You seem to know this guy called Stella? We're somewhat acquainted. Teacher Poulin now had both hands on the railing and looked at Father Stella's performance with interest. He smiled and said, In your records there's no information about Father Stella? Rhea shook her head and said calmly, At least the files I received didn't mention it. No, it did mention that the warden of the church's Godly Might prison was held accountable for secretly releasing a holy knight who betrayed the church. In the end, He was stripped of his position as warden and demoted to a lowly priest. But it didn't mention that he had this kind of strength. Teacher Poulin was even more curious. What kind of strength? Riaz frowned and said, "Isn't it obvious? Exceeding the world's limit is enough to attract the rejection of the will of the subworld." Teacher Poulin said, "The will of the subworld you mentioned didn't descend, right?" Riaz nodded in silence. Teacher Poulin smiled and said, "Since the limit is exceeded, the will of the subworld will reject and descend. In other words, if it doesn't descend and there's no rejection, it means that it hasn't exceeded this limit. You can understand it this way, right?" "How is that possible?" Riaz suddenly showed a shocked expression. "It hasn't descended all this time." Riaz suddenly fell silent. Could it be that the upper limit of this subworld was higher than the upper limit of all the subworlds that the secret society had evaluated over the countless years? Could it be that it had completely exceeded the limits of the secret society? However, Poulin was right. Since it didn't descend, it meant that it didn't reject it. It hadn't exceeded the allowed limit. But was this possible? Stella. That shocking punch, even if it was placed in the gap between dimensions, Riaz knew that she couldn't block it even if she wasn't suppressed. This subworld has been magically modified. Suddenly, a thought flashed through the red-haired girl's mind. At the same time, streaks of golden light began to return to the scene of the power conference, and fell into one of the stands. These were the media that were directly taken away by Kelowna Shinryu with a wave of his hand. Kelowna Shinryu also slowly fell into the Chien stands. Looks like the power conference can't go on anymore. Seeing Long Shiro return, Fire Cloud Demon God shook his head with a bitter smile. "It's about time to announce the end of today's conference, right?" The Crimson Blaze Tower's meteor and Stella's shocking punch had directly smashed the confidence of the extraordinarily prideful Transcendents. Those who still had a glimmer of hope that they could pick up some scraps in the final stage of the conference were all swept away. Long Shirua didn't say anything and just nodded lightly. When those who escaped earlier returned, she planned to announce the end of this conference. Someone else wants to go up on stage?" Fire Cloud Demon God, who had been paying attention to the situation below, couldn't help but frown. A pale-faced young man slowly walked to the center of the shattered arena. Father Stella was still lingering around, and when he saw someone walking over, he instantly became alert. "I'm not here to challenge you, Father." The pale-faced young man shook his head at this time, and then directly pointed with his finger. "I'm here to challenge her." Father Stella subconsciously looked at the young man's finger, and finally saw that the guy was pointing at Kelowna's Shinryu. "Damn! You're awesome!" The priest suddenly gave a thumbs up at this time. "You're actually using your life to show off. I've helped so many old ladies, I don't mind helping one more." Father Stella couldn't help but give a thumbs up. The powerful Transcendents who were still in the stands couldn't help but show all kinds of expressions at this time. "You want to challenge me?" Long Shirua turned her head at this time and looked at the pale-faced young man. "You've got guts. I accept, let's begin." Saying that, Kelowna's Shinryu raised his hand and slowly pointed his finger. On the tip of his finger, a golden light condensed. In an instant, the pale-faced young man's face was suddenly filled with fear, but he didn't retreat and said loudly, "I'm here to challenge Kelowna's Shinryu's team. Those who want to challenge Kelowna's Shinryu, please join my team." "What did you say?" Long Shirua couldn't help but be stunned. The golden light on his fingertip didn't shoot out, and at the same time, she also recognized the voice of this pale-faced young man. This guy was clearly the guy who was secretly sneaking around when she was planning to destroy the meteorite. "I'm here to challenge Kelowna's Shinryu's team. All Transcendents who want to challenge Kelowna's Shinryu, please join my team." At this time, the pale-faced young man said loudly, "It's me, Vampire Marquis of the 13 Clans, Lester. Please join my team." "Wait, do you know what you're doing?" The challenge this time. Fire Cloud Evil God frowned and was about to explain, but suddenly stopped. He thought of vampire marquis named Lester said slowly. The rule of the challenge is that if there's a challenge, it must be accepted, but there's no rule that says multiple people can't challenge the same target. Now, I'm here to challenge your team again. All those who want to challenge Kelowna's Shinryu, please join my team. If you lose, you lose. If you win, we'll consider the distribution of the beads. Lester's voice was so loud. But, could it be done like this? No, it could be done like this. There was indeed no such rule in the challenge. In other words, Vampire Marquis Lester's voice was still ringing in their ears. However, when they looked at the unreachable Kelowna's Shinryu, their gazes seemed to have changed. I'm in! In the distance, an angry roar was heard, and then a figure came quickly. If one looked closely, one would find that this person was the warrior who was beaten into the legendary ABA at the beginning of the challenge. Ahow ma! I'm in too. I'm in too. I'll join in the fun. One figure after another began to gather around Vampire Marquis Lester. In just a moment, this temporary team that challenged Shinryu had more than a dozen members. There's such a thing. Father Striker slapped his head, as if he had suddenly realized something. He picked up his holy sword of physics, walked to the temporary team, and kicked Reist aside. The C position is mine. Everyone says that Shinryu is invincible. I want to experience it. I'm not the only one. It was Lamius's voice. More than a dozen, more than 20. The number of people was increasing. There were more and more transcendents who rushed back from afar. Although Fire Cloud Evil God was wearing the self-made Dragon King mask, he could feel that Long Shirua's expression was getting worse and worse. Lord Long, why don't we just ask them to stop? Fire Cloud Evil God said with a frown, it's not impossible to overturn today's result. After all, after Qi Yan's trouble, we can say no more. Kelowna's Shinryu waved her hand abruptly and strode forward. She hadn't been in a good mood since the beginning of the day. Now that she was furious, she flew up into the air and said, I'll take all of them. In the sky, clouds gathered again. In the huge clouds, the head of a huge godly dragon appeared, looking down at all living beings. Chapter 2022. Join the battle, join the battle, join the battle. There seemed to be a strange voice, as if it was an irrational call, as if it was an instinctive hatred for the strongest in the heart. In the sky, the gigantic divine dragon was looking down at the ground. On the ground, figures began to gather at the shattered fighting ring. When Kelowna Shinryu said all the following words, it was equivalent to a declaration of challenge to all the transcendents in the world. Of course, it was impossible for all the transcendents in the world to come at this time, but the transcendents present represented almost all the transcendent. Since ancient times, there was a rule that Kelowna could not cross. But was Kelowna really unsurpassable? Kelowna Shinryu was undoubtedly powerful, but if one was not an opponent, then what about 2, 3, 10, 80, 100? 1,000? Could this forbidden line of transcendence really withstand the joint invasion of the strong from all over the world? Kelowna Shinryu, I am standing here and joining this team, not to get the bead. A man raised the staff in his hand. I just want to see the power of the so-called top of the world, to see the invincible legend that has been passed down since ancient times, whether it is a legend or a deity. A solitary cloud, I am here to ask for advice. It was the leader of the hermits of Guyama Mountain who had been recuperating for half a day. The Japanese made a move, but the handsome Onmyoji did not move. It was the other people from the Japanese side who came down. Paladin Wasco stood up at this time with a dignified expression. I also want to see this top of the world. Although it is a bit despicable, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to test the strength of Kelowna Shinryu. Stella knows this better than me, so he did not hesitate. Sister Lavinia did not stop him at this time. Gareth, what are you going to do? What can I do? My relationship with the Kelowna Authority is actually not bad. Although, to be honest, I also want to go down and try the true power of this world's legend, but it's too late. What's too late? Farrell's up. What? Damn it, this lunatic. What is he trying to do? Riaz, where do you want to go? The enchantress of Underwater City suddenly pulled Riaz down and angrily rebuked. I'm a little thirsty. I want to get something to drink. I saw a vending machine in the corridor downstairs. You're not allowed to go anywhere. Sit tight. Tower Master, are you all right? At this time, Bing Han slowly supported Scarlet Flame back. Seeing this, Elizabeth and Zhong Luoyue quickly went up to greet them, and the members of the Magician Association also went up to greet them. Scarlet Flame is fine. He just needs to rest for a while. The Ice Tower Master waved her hand and said, Lord Frost, in this situation, what should we do? One of the magicians frowned and pointed at the army below. How is it? The Ice Tower Master coldly swept her gaze over the stage and sneered. Apart from a limited few people, the rest are nothing more than cannon fodder. In fact, the more people that enter the stage, the angrier that woman will be. I don't know what the 13 families are planning, but from this moment on, in my name, cut off all the paths to the 13 families in the Inhuman territory. I'll propose to expel the 13 families from the Inhuman territory's highest council. Lord Frost, do you want the Shinryu from Kelowna to plunder the Inhuman territory every month? No. This crazy woman, she dares to come once a week. The Scarlet Flame Tower Master's expression was very bad, but he said gloomily, I have to hide my golden apple tree. Hearing the two Tower Masters' words, the magicians knew that the association would definitely not participate this time. Only the Dao Sect Association in Kelowna and all the Transcendents under the Demon Race Alliance didn't move. Regardless of the internal strife between the Dao Sect and the Demon Race for the past thousands of years, it was an internal matter in Kelowna. However, when the whole world was challenging the Shinryu from Kelowna, they couldn't do such a thing. Shinryu was the religion of Kelowna. If any creature from Kelowna stood against the Long Shirua, they would be despised by the countless creatures in Kelowna. As long as they weren't stupid, neither the Dao Sect nor the Demon Race would do it. Not only would they not do it, but because of the Vampire Marquis Lest's provocation, the Transcendents from all over the world came to form teams. This made both the Dao Sect and the Demon Race feel a little cold towards the Transcendents outside of Kelowna. These damned bastards, 70 years ago, they didn't dare to come themselves. They only dared to provoke the Human Alliance to invade. If it wasn't for the rule that Transcendents couldn't interfere. As expected, their ambitions are revealed when the map is unrolled. We can't just watch the Dragon Monarch be humiliated. These barbarians, if they want to fight, let's fight. After thousands of years of internal strife, the Dao Sect and the Demon Race actually became united against a common enemy. However, at this moment, the 100 Tribulations Taoist called out the Three Immeasurable. Everyone, Shinryu has already said that she will take on all of them. Why should we cause trouble for the Shinryu? However, how the Transcendents treated Kelowna today, let's remember it for now. The 100 Tribulations Taoist's voice was cold. This evergreen Taoist had been around for God knows how many years. He always had a smile on his face, but he didn't have a hint of a smile when he spoke. Let's remember it for now. These bastards, how dare they bully the Lord Long like this? She has been releasing the boundary for these guys since the beginning of the battle. Zhuefeng, what do you want to do? Emo Xiaofei frowned. He had come back long ago. After the meteorite disappeared, he came back. He was a little tired, but it didn't matter. Needless to say, Zhuefeng said angrily, I'm going to help the Lord Long to beat these bastards to death. Don't go. Emo Xiaofei's voice deepened. Sit down. There was even a trace of unquestionable dominance in his voice. Zhuefeng was startled subconsciously. He sat down instinctively and didn't dare to move. Beside him, Zixing couldn't help but frown. For this priest of the Greedy Wolf clan, it wasn't a good thing that the star monarch of the Greedy Wolf clan was tamed by a human to this extent, even if this person was the disciple of the dragon monarch. Emo Xiaofei seemed to feel Zixing's gaze, so he looked over abruptly. At a glance, Zixing was shocked and immediately lowered her head in silence. When did this Lord Emo have such a strong aura of disdain? Emo Xiaofei shook his head gently at this time, then pinched his eyebrows. His tone softened a lot in an instant. He looked at Zhuifeng. Zhuifeng, tell me, who is the one being challenged now? Needless to say, it's the Lord Long. Zhuifeng said angrily at this time. Who is the Lord Long? Emo Xiaofei asked again. Lord Long is the Lord Long. Kelowna's Shinryu. Zhuifeng frowned at this time. Brother, do you still need to ask? Who is the Shinryu of Kelowna? Emo Xiaofei asked again. The Shinryu of Kelowna is. Zhuifeng gave a start. She's our Shinryu. Look at her. Emo Xiaofei waved his hand at this time. Look at her carefully. Look at her clearly. She's our Shinryu. Zhuifeng seemed to understand something, but he couldn't understand it clearly. He just looked up at the divine dragon in the sky, suddenly having the thought of worshipping her in his heart. However, the power of Greedy Wolf's star in his body was also stirring at this time, as if it was telling him not to lower his head. For a moment, he was stunned. We've studied the existence of the Shinryu of Kelowna. On the higher level of the spectator stand, the red-haired girl stroked her hair in the wind and said slowly, looking at the records of all the subworlds known by the secret society, only here exists the Shinryu of Kelowna. Only here? Mr. Poulin couldn't help but open his mouth in surprise at this time. Riaz nodded. Only here, as if it's the only existence. This kind of independence is in fact what all the strong people who have transcended pursue. But different from all the strong people who pursue independence, she already has this kind of independence from the moment she was born, but there are no legends of her in the subworld. Mr. Poulin was silent. He knew very little about the dimensional crevice, about the strong people in the void, and everything there, and most of it was vague and unclear. The Shinryu of Kelowna is special, Riaz said. As long as she stands on this land called Kelowna, she has endless power. But we believe that this kind of endless power has a limit. Even the power of the entire land of Kelowna can't be supplied endlessly. It will be exhausted. Yes and no. Riaz shook her head. Why do you say so? Mr. Poulin asked seriously. Riaz pondered and said, It's faith. It's rooted in the depths of the people of Kelowna, the faith of the Shinryu. This faith is like an inseparable part of the soul of the entire people. The source of the power of the Shinryu of Kelowna is not only this land, but also all the living beings on this land. So we boldly speculate that even if this land is destroyed, as long as the people are not destroyed, the Shinryu of Kelowna will not disappear. She may be defeated by a stronger power, but she will never disappear. They're about to fight, Mr. Poulin said softly at this time. Riaz nodded, but opened her hands, and a book with a golden cover slowly opened between her hands. Riaz took a golden quill out of thin air, and then wrote something on the golden book. It seemed that she was going to record this battle herself. Is there no one else who wants to fight? A voice that sounded like the might of the heavens rang in the sky. Under the gaze of the dragon head formed by the clouds, everyone felt an unprecedented pressure. Fighting might just be a moment of passion, or just going with the flow, but since they were already fighting, they had to think about what to do next. Facing the terrifying pressure of the Shinryu of Kelowna, the people of the challenge team couldn't help but be alert. But looking around, the number of people in the temporary battle team had already exceeded 300. This was almost a third of the total number of participants in the Power Conference. The number of people in the challenge team was huge, and under the pressure of the heavens, it was one of the few things that gave them confidence. At this time, the Shinryu of Kelowna slowly waved her hand. Everyone was on high alert as if they were facing a great enemy. Suddenly, a golden drizzle fell from the sky. This drizzle was like a strand of hair, and there was no way to avoid it. What's going on? Why do I feel like my stamina? My injuries from this morning's battle were actually, under the golden drizzle, those transcendents who were injured and those who had not fully recovered their stamina suddenly felt that their bodies were rapidly recovering. Don't say that I bullied you, the Shinryu in the sky said calmly, and don't say that your condition is not good either. The Shinryu of Kelowna actually acted at this time and healed all the transcendents of the challenge team, restoring them to their peak condition. Everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. How did she do it? Our powers are not even of the same system. So many different forms of power, and yet she can link them seamlessly. The Shinryu of Kelowna? After a while, the golden drizzle stopped and the Shinryu of Kelowna said loudly, "Let's fight, you bunch of trash. Since I'm on stage, there's no excuse for me to step down. I'm not that talented, but I'm here to challenge you." A sword light soared into the sky. It was none other than a hermit from Mount Jialua who had made the first move. Carrying fierce killing intent, the sword light tore through the air toward the true dragon of the divine land. Scrap metal! The Shinryu of Kelowna waved his hand, and the flying sword was instantly slapped down. The flying sword even pierced into the ground, and no one knew how deep it went. The hermit of Guyama Mountain who acted was shocked. However, the Shinryu of Kelowna said, "Come one by one, wasting my time. Come at me all at once." Following the long Shirua's words, rays of golden light shot out from the ground. From these rays of light, golden figures walked out. There were about the same number of golden figures as the entire team of challengers. At this moment, the true dragon of China waved his hand, and hundreds of golden figures in the sky instantly swooped down toward the challengers on the ground. Are these the clones of the Shinryu of Kelowna? How can one of her clones be so powerful? Are these clones all the same? Come at them all at once. It means that all her clones are coming at once. Facing the charge of the hundreds of clones of the Shinryu of Kelowna, the challengers of the challengers were instantly crushed. Not many of them could withstand the fists of the clones of the Shinryu. Even though they had been healed by the golden drizzle, they were still crushed. Boom, boom, boom. This was a one-sided crushing of the opponent. Boom, boom, boom. Wasco, you trash. If your back is weak, don't show off. Kneel. You only lasted for less than a minute. I, Stella, am ashamed to be in the same team as you. You motherf *cur. The elderly paladin did not finish cursing, but in the end, he could not hold on and was sent flying. Father Stella, who was carrying a holy sword, looked coldly at the challengers who were beaten up one by one. He squatted on the ground and looked at the fair legs of the challengers who were wearing short skirt. Then, he moved his mouth and said something. I knew it. How am I going to fight this guy with a mana bar lock? Father, I am the chosen one, a golden thigh, but I can't beat this guy with a cheat. Why should I join in the fun? You old man, didn't you still go up? A mocking voice sounded from behind Stella. He did not even need to turn around to know that it was Lamia's voice. I can't not go up. My wife is still looking at me. The priest pointed at the image of a beautiful woman on his chest and said proudly. Lamia's could not help but shake her head. She did not have anything to argue with this priest, because a clone of Shinryu had already found her. At the same time, in front of Father Stella, there was already a clone of Shinryu walking towards him. Father Stella slowly stood up. Lamia's also activated the huge fighting spirit in her body. She did not have the intention to belittle them just because they were clones. At Lamia's level of strength, she could feel that the strength of these doppelgangers was not much different from that of the true dragon just by looking at the fluctuation of power. In other words, Kelowna's Shinryu was directly supplying these clones with the same amount of strength as the main body. This was very scary. One Kelowna's Shinryu was equivalent to a few hundred peak extraordinaries? Impossible. There must be a limit to this power output. Bang dash. A figure directly crashed into the wall of the stands. His body was directly embedded into the wall, and he was already foaming at the mouth. Shinryu. Too scary. Cough, cough, cough. But this was not the first on his left and right. There were more than 10 people who were also directly embedded into the wall, lined up in a row. Some people's entire bodies were smashed into the ground, leaving only a little of their heads exposed. Some people were paralyzed on the ground like mud, their bones were broken, and they were no different from dying. Hundreds of Shinryu's clones pushed through the hundreds of challengers, and they lost almost 60% of their members. The remaining challengers, under the second attack of Shinryu's clones, only managed to resist for a few breaths of time before most of them fell to the ground, doubting their lives. Those who did not go up were all watching. Those in front of the screen were all watching. The world was also in the hands of Kelowna's Shinryu. There is a kind of power that is unreachable, and it is called the 10 minutes of darkness. But there is also a kind of power that is called Kelowna's Shinryu. The invincible Shinryu. Hundreds of transcendents couldn't even get close to Kelowna's Shinryu, and they couldn't even defeat her clones. Moreover, before this, Kelowna's Shinryu used her power to heal all the challengers' injuries. It seems that we have to revise our policy towards China. In today's world of transcendence, the rules of the human world are completely inappropriate, absolutely. We can't let this woman step into our country's border. Even if our country allows Qi Yen to enter, we can't let her in. Tower Master is right, they are just cannon fodder, but no matter how many of them go up, they are still cannon fodder. Luckily, our Magician Association didn't get involved in this mess. So strong. This Kelowna's Shinryu, could it be that she solved infinite energy? Hearing Riaz's muttering, the witch in the underwater city couldn't help but frown. Infinite energy. Isn't it a hypothesis that has been overturned? It's just that our underwater city's technology has been overturned. Riaz shook his head. Maybe this technology has already appeared on the surface? In a way that we have never come into contact with. Infinite energy. The witch in the underwater city couldn't help but fall into deep thought. The history of the people in the underwater city was much older than the humans on the surface. The people in the underwater city were even the remnants of the previous civilization. However, over the countless years, countless scholars in the underwater city tried to solve the proposition of infinite energy, but they didn't succeed. If the underwater city could grasp infinite energy in the final battle with Sin, it wouldn't have been destroyed by Sin. Riaz, do you still remember the things that we solved in the central tower of the experimental site after the war? You mean the experimental subjects? Blue blood is also an experimental subject. The witch in the underwater city suddenly whispered, Shinryu seems to also. The witch in the underwater city suddenly stopped talking and signaled Riaz to stop talking about this matter at this time. Riaz seemed to have noticed something and frowned, but he looked at a corner of the stands. That guy seems to be among the people who didn't go on the field. Riaz saw a familiar figure. That guy seemed to be the young man who called himself Gongsun Jishui, who contacted him in private on the first day of the summit meeting. But when Riaz wanted to take a closer look, the figure had already disappeared. That guy has been staring at us. The witch in the underwater city sneered at this time. Riaz, however, shook his head. So be it if he sneered. It was better than beating someone up. What if it affected the fetus? There aren't many left. Riaz's gaze returned to the battlefield at this time, the remaining few. Lyoga, their avatars are all black. The black-named monster appeared. Lamia's, Father Stella, and a man in a wrinkled white suit were still in this broken martial arts arena at this time. And Shinryu's hundreds of doppelgangers were only left with the 3 doppelgangers that were fighting Lamia's and the other 2. As for the other hundreds of doppelgangers, after defeating the challengers, they disappeared directly. Although Long Shiro was proud of her unlimited power, she used the power of Kelowna's earth. Therefore, after pushing through, these doppelgangers directly returned to the earth. But at this time, Lamia's Father Stella and the thin man in the white suit were in three corners respectively, fighting Shinryu's doppelgangers in an earth-shattering battle. Father Stella's terror was already shocking when he destroyed the meteorite. When Lamia's fought Wolfgang, although she didn't show much violence, she still gave people an unfathomable feeling. It seemed to be expected that they could fight Kelowna's Shinryu's doppelgangers for a long time without slacking off. But where did this man in the white suit come from? Long Shiro looked expressionlessly at the guy who was fighting three of her doppelgangers for a long time without losing. Although doppelgangers were doppelgangers and couldn't have the same strength as the main body, each doppelganger could display at least half of their normal combat power. It was just that they were a bit fragile. These three guys. Kelowna's Shinryu muttered, but no one knew what he was thinking. Suddenly, an extremely strong energy wave erupted from the man in the white suit. "This isn't your strongest. Let me see your strongest." As he spoke, the man in the white suit suddenly punched his own chest. Immediately, the man in the white suit vomited out a substance that looked like black mud. At this moment, as the man in the white suit vomited the black mud, the strong energy wave on his body became even stronger. The air vibrated. Seeing this, Shinryu's doppelgangers immediately suppressed him. At this moment, the man in the white suit steadily threw out a punch. He and Kelowna's Shinryu's doppelgangers collided. Explode. Under the man in the white suit's punch, Shinryu's doppelgangers were expressionless, but their bodies shattered little by little and disappeared after they shattered. It was the first time that someone had defeated a team of hundreds of transcendents, and the first time that someone had directly destroyed Shinryu's doppelgangers. Bang! Another loud sound was heard. At this moment, Father Stella was carrying the sacred sword of physics, and the Shinryu's doppelgangers that he was fighting also shattered. Almost at the same time, Lamia slowly exhaled and raised her head. Beside her, a patch of golden light spots was dispersing with the wind. Long Shiro coldly looked at them and met their gazes. She muttered, "At least 3 old men, no, there's one more." As she spoke, she raised her head and saw a black shadow rapidly approaching from the sky. It was a thing that was covered in black carapace from head to toe. It looked like the source of ruthlessness, like a human but not a human. This strange person covered in black carapace slapped down with its palm, and behind it, huge shadows of 10 lions and 10 tigers condensed. Martial Dao true force? Kelowna's Shinryu frowned. She had seen this palm before. This was the famous skill of the old fire cloud evil god when he was young. 10 lions and 10 tigers overturning the heavens and earth, overturning thunder light annihilation palm. Although the old man was quite casual in terms of food and clothing, for some reason, when it came to things like this, he was particularly stupid. In the Qian stands, Fire Cloud Evil God suddenly stood up. Little she. ######PS1. Even if we're an old couple, we still have to serve this man TT. PS2. 1/1. PS3. My head hurts. I'm having a headache. Chapter 2023. The wind follows the dragon, the cloud follows the tiger. In an instant, the palm formed with the power of 10 lions and 10 tigers had already arrived in front of Long Shiro. The black-shelled creature's palm had already stirred up the clouds in the sky. Faced with such a powerful attack, Kelowna's Shinryu still chose to slap it. A huge shock wave spread out in the sky, and the 10 lions and 10 tigers were shattered one after another. However, at this moment, a black spike suddenly shot out from the black-shelled creature's fist. A needle hidden in silk floss, this black spike was the black-shelled creature's true attack. The hard spike pierced through Kelowna's Shinryu barrier. The black spike was now heading straight for Long Shiro's throat. There was a light snort in the sky. When the black spike arrived, Kelowna's Shinryu had already caught it with its palm. However, the moment the black spike was grabbed, it was instantly peeled off from the black-shelled creature's fist. Instead, it was swung out with its other fist. Long Shirua's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. Using its palm like a knife, it instantly chopped off the spike, but at this moment, hundreds of black spikes shot out from the black-shelled creature's body at the same time. "I'll play with you." Long Shirua once again slapped out with its palm. A powerful force covered his palms, and he fearlessly welcomed the spikes. In an instant, the spikes in front of the black-shelled creature's chest were directly shattered. However, it did not retreat. Its entire body was like a hedgehog, crazily charging forward. These spikes grew at will, and were able to eerily shoot out from the black-shelled creature's fierce attacks, and this black-shelled creature's cultivation was not weak. However, its opponent was the undefeatable Shinryu. No matter how crazy it was, it could not change the fact that it was at a disadvantage. Don't be fooled by the fact that this black-shelled creature was attacking ferociously. In fact, it was being easily suppressed by Kelowna and Shinryu. Right at this moment, a sharp sound of breaking through the air was heard. On the ground, the man in a wrinkled white suit also swung his fist. Although the man's attack was suspected of being a sneak attack, his fist that could even shake space was unable to hide the terrifying strength of the man in the white suit. Long Shirua had seen this man in a white suit before. Before the summit meeting started, this guy had inexplicably found his way to her hospital. The world was very big and miracles were happening all the time. Long Shirua believed that in this era, there was no lack of strong people. Affected by the explosion of spiritual energy in the divine land, in the near future, cultivators from all over the world would only appear like bamboo shoots after the rain. Even so, she said softly, "I won't lose." Facing the man in the white suit, Farrell's terrifying fist, Long Shirua stretched out her hand and directly blocked it with her palm. On the other side, the black-shelled creature's fist also swung at her at the same time. She also blocked it with her palm, and then directly squeezed the black-shelled creature's fist. The two forces from Farrell and the black-shelled creature were like two energy whirlpools in the sky. At this moment, they were squeezing Kelowna and Shinryu together. Long Shirua was currently in the center of these two energy whirlpools. It was as if she had been trapped deep within, unable to move. Right at this moment, a sneaky figure had unknowingly jumped to the height of the center of the whirlpool. This figure was impressively Father Stella. Shameless. What kind of priest is this? Below, Kelowna's Taoist demon cursed angrily. However, Father Stella didn't care at all. He held the sacred armor of physics with both hands and directly smashed down on Kelowna's Shinryu, who was being squeezed in the center of the whirlpool. "I'm not the only one who's picking up scraps." Kelowna's Shinryu raised his head and saw the ordinary crowbar smashing straight down. At the same time, he felt an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation coming from behind him. Lamia's, the fighting spirit that had been cultivated for countless years, condensed into a ray of light on Lamia's fist, a ray of light that could shatter the earth. It was even faster than the sacred sword of physics, and it blasted onto Kelowna's Shinryu behind her. Just like that, four powerful forces bombarded Kelowna's Shinryu's surroundings at the same time. The violent energy whirlpool instantly swept through the broken scene of the Power Conference. In this terrifying turbulence, all the transcendents gritted their teeth and resisted. However, the intertwined forces finally turned into a dazzling white light that swallowed everything. Screens, all the wired and wireless screens in the world, as long as they were focused on this earth-shattering battle, they released a dazzling white light at the same time. It lasted for a full 10 seconds before it gradually disappeared. When people got used to the blurred vision, their hearts tightened, and their eyes widened impatiently, wanting to see the result. Finally, the image on the screen seemed to have removed a layer of hazy veil, revealing its original appearance. Before the cameras of the media, the entire scene of the power conference, had disappeared. At this moment, what appeared in front of the people's eyes was a deep pit that was hundreds of meters wide and extended to the distant mountains as if it was going to extend to the end of the horizon. Of course, it was impossible for there to be a deep pit that extended to the horizon. It only extended to the end of the camera. It might be thousands of meters, or thousands of meters, or even a few kilometers. It was impossible to measure at the moment. Of the 8 viewing platforms, only one was left unscathed, the only viewing platform that the media was in. Other than that, everything else on the ground had disappeared. In the sky, all the transcendents used various methods to hover in mid-air. There were also transcendents who came out from the depths of the earth in time. Fear appeared on their faces. They suspected that their transcendence might be fake, because the power that destroyed everything before them was comparable to the most powerful weapon of humanity. It was a nuclear weapon that could destroy the world with just one shot. Humans? No, can living things really be so powerful? The humans on the screen felt fear that seemed to come from the depths of their souls, fear towards this terrifying power that erupted from an individual living thing. They were just ordinary humans, not transcendent. Even if they experienced the 10 minutes in black. That was a nightmare for transcendence. The 10 minutes in black only restricted transcendent. For ordinary humans, they didn't feel anything at all. However, the current destruction was enough to let the humans feel what was the real transcendence, what was called heaven falling and earth rending. Shinryu. Shinryu didn't die. A golden light, like a burning flame, went from weak to strong and finally burst out. Kelowna Shinryu's figure appeared in the eyes of the people once again. The golden light seemed to be able to bring warmth. It dispelled the fear in the hearts of the ordinary human media on the only viewing platform. At this moment, Kelowna Shinryu bathed in the golden flame. Her long black hair was dyed with the same color as the golden light. Her clothes were a little damaged, but only the edges were damaged. There were a few cracks on the Dragon King mask, and even a corner was missing, revealing part of Kelowna Shinryu's chin and lips, but people could see a little bit of golden light in the eyes of the Dragon King mask. Shinryu, invincible, facing the eruption of a violent power that was more terrifying than a meteor, Kelowna Shinryu still proudly hovered in the sky. Even under this violent power, she was still able to preserve the media's viewing platform behind her. Not fighting anymore, not fighting anymore. I can't win at all. At this moment, Father Stella lowered the crowbar in his hand and said crazily, "If this priest was in another world, I would be a proper protagonist, but here, I'm just a small shrimp. What's the point of fighting?" Not far away, Farlier stood still, his whole body in an abnormal state of relaxation. He muttered to himself, "Other than not wearing the armor of legacy, I've already expelled all the poison in my body. This is already my strongest attack. Even if I wear the armor of legacy, it won't be much stronger. This feeling of powerlessness, finally, I see hope to fight against them." Finally, in the other corner, Lamia's looked at her palm. The blood vessels on her palm had already burst, and her slender fingers were already stained with blood. She couldn't help but slowly sigh and said self-deprecatingly, "I'm afraid I didn't use a fake cheat." Even if she still had the strength to fight, but until now, she still couldn't feel Kelowna Shinryu's power weakening at all. What they were facing was an enemy that already stood at the peak of the world. Furthermore, this enemy was a monster that could draw power from the divine land at any given moment. The power grew and multiplied endlessly. How could they fight it? If they were the first to collapse from exhaustion, wouldn't the enemy have just finished warming up? "You guys had fun fighting, right?" At this moment, the heavenly voice sounded again. Lamia's and Father Stella's expression changed slightly, and Farlier frowned at this moment. "But I haven't." Kelowna Shinryu's voice slowly fell. Lamia's face instantly paled, and just as she was about to speak, Kelowna Shinryu, bathed in golden flames, had already broken through space with one step, and appeared in front of Lamia's. Lamia's fighting spirit burst out crazily at this moment. Kelowna Shinryu's palm directly broke through the fighting spirit, and pinched Lamia's head, grabbed her head, and then directly pressed it to the ground. Bang! In an instant, the already shattered ground once again, hundreds of meters long cracks crisscrossed. F***CK. F***CK. Seeing this, Father Stella directly cursed. Kelowna Shinryu, who pressed Lamia's into the ground, at this moment, like a ghost, appeared behind Father Stella. Surrender and lose half of it. At this time, the priest opened his eyes wide. I still have dozens of ancient flashcards that I have kept for more than 20 years, I'll give them to you too. Bang! A punch directly hit Father Stella's cheek. The priest's nose was instantly twisted to one side, and his nose was bleeding, and his body was like a whirlwind, directly flying to the sky. Kelowna Shinryu's figure disappeared again. At this time, Farlier crossed his hands in front of his body, and his eyes revealed a fanatical look. Come on! Let me see how big the gap between us is. This will be the source of my future efforts. I will catch up. Idiot! Kelowna Shinryu's palm pressed down. Almighty Dragon of Heaven! Ha 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 ha! In the crazy laughter, Farlier actually opened his hands at this time, and welcomed this irresistible power of heaven. His whole body directly sank into the ground, and the blood vessels all over his body burst. Like a blood man, at this time, Father Stella, who spiraled to the sky, just fell down. The golden flame was still warm. However, Kelowna Shinryu's gaze made people feel as if their souls were frozen, and they couldn't help but tremble, spreading throughout the whole body. Lamia's body was sandwiched in the gravel of the ground, and all the bones in her body burst. Father Stella was now lying on the ground, motionless. As for Farlier, he was like a blood man, and half of his body was still stuck in the ground. There is still half an hour before sunset ends. Kelowna Shinryu looked down at the common people. I will wait for another half an hour. If no one comes in half an hour, the power conference will end here. His voice fell. But no one raised their head. Fire Cloud Evil God rushed into the ground at this time, looking for something in the ground. He already couldn't care less about Kelowna Shinryu's invincible posture at this time. Anyway, he always knew that he couldn't beat him, so he didn't need to care too much. Soon, he dug out something from a few big rocks. It was the black carapace creature that made him famous in the past. But at this time, the black carapace creature's carapace was broken. Although the black carapace creature was strong, it was still a big gap compared to Father Stella and the others. After the white light, in the explosion of the violent power, it was already thrown out. Fire Cloud Evil God's eyes focused at this time. He reached out and tore open the carapace on the black carapace creature's head, and was able to see the creature's face. It really is you, Xiaoxi. Fire Cloud Evil God was now anxious about his disciple's condition. He quickly dragged Yan Xiaoxi's body out, and reached out to check Yan Xiaoxi's pulse. But at this time, there seemed to be a faint sound of a bell suddenly rang out. Yan Xiaoxi suddenly opened her eyes. Fire Cloud Evil God was stunned. He immediately looked down. A black spike, at this time, had directly pierced through Fire Cloud Evil God's abdomen. Xiaoxi, you, Fire Cloud Evil God gritted his teeth, waved his hand and broke the black spike. But at this time, Yan Xiaoxi was like a demon. The black carapace on her body crazily surged out again, and she even let out an inhuman cry. Fire Cloud Evil God immediately used his true power to directly close the wound, and then slapped down. Xiaoxi? I'll take you back to the headquarters. Yan Xiaoxi, who was once again covered in the black carapace, suddenly plunged into the ground. Before Fire Cloud Evil God's palm hit, Yan Xiaoxi had already disappeared. In a rage, Fire Cloud Evil God slashed out with his hand like a long sword. A sword chi instantly broke through 100 meters, cutting the ground open. But under the ground there was no one left. Advisor, you're injured? A few agents from the administration rushed over at this time. It's fine. Fire Cloud Evil God took a deep breath. His expression was uncertain. Check all the surveillance cameras, all the videos. You must find out how Xiaoxi came here. Yes. Time passed little by little. Seeing the setting sun disappear at the end of the horizon, at this time, the scene of the power conference was still silent. Kelowna Shinryu bathed in golden flames, but even when the sun's light was about to disappear, she still shone on all living beings. Probably no one else will make a move. On the ground beside an inconspicuous rock, the red-haired girl Riaz shook her head and said, "As expected, as long as this woman is on this land, no one can defeat her." "Not even you, sir?" Teacher Poulin asked curiously. "This hidden cultivator from outside this world." Riaz shook her head at this time. The outside world is the outside world, and the inside world is the inside world. In this world, there's not much difference. The upper limit has long been locked. I admit that the upper limit here is higher than any other place I know, but, Riaz said with a serious expression, according to the records of the secret society, Kelowna Shinryu once killed immortals. Immortals? Many years ago, a group of cultivators from this world's Kelowna, the legendary immortals. At some point in time, some of them came back and seemed to be looking for something, but in the end they were directly suppressed and killed by Kelowna Shinryu. The reason for this is still unknown. It seems that, among the group of immortals that died here, one of them luckily survived. However, he has been suppressed in a place called Xianyuan Palace. Teacher Poulin smiled and said, "Your secret society records the history of every world and knows so many secrets. Don't tell me you're an information broker in the dimensional void?" But Riaz took a deep look at Professor Poulin. To a certain extent, this guy was actually partially right. Although the purpose of the secret society has always been to record history, it was to find clues that lead to the origin of all the countless histories. But in fact, due to the enormous information network of the secret society, many organizations, forces, and loners would choose to contact the secret society in order to obtain information from the secret society. When they wanted to investigate a certain subworld, they would purchase information from the secret society so that it would be easier for them to do things. Someone is challenging? Teacher Poulin suddenly opened his mouth in surprise and then frowned. "It's her?" "Who?" Riaz looked over subconsciously. Under the last rays of the sunset, a blonde woman wearing a black and white maid costume with a clown mask on her face leisurely walked over. In the golden flame, Kelowna Shinryu took a deep breath. When she saw the last figure that appeared, Long Shirua's annoyance almost reached its peak for the day. She finally knew the reason why she had been annoyed since this morning. Chapter 2024. She was here. The moment she appeared, everyone's memories seemed to be pulled back to a few days ago. They would not forget, and they would not forget. She was the woman who appeared beside him, the man who brought about the nightmarish 10 minutes of darkness to all the transcendence in the world. Everyone's heartstrings were pulled up at this moment. In the power conference that was left with only an empty space, all eyes were focused on her at this moment. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Some people did not need to do anything. She only needed to stand there, and she would become the center of attention. She walked slowly, and every step she took seemed to be the perfect distance. Every time she walked, her clothes would shake, and no matter how many frames were used, it would not be able to fully restore the reality of her clothes. She was here. She was here. Did that mean he was here as well? Who was the person that all the transcendents in the world wanted to forget, wanted to deny, and wished that they could not meet him in their lives had also come, and he was nearby? What was his goal? To challenge the Kelowna Shinryu, who had completely displayed his invincible power? But he did not need to do so anymore. Maybe he is not as invincible as we thought. Yes, that might just be a group hypnosis technique. Without a doubt, on that day, all the eyes of the world were focused on the summit meeting, focused on him. Maybe we were unknowingly hypnotized or influenced, and because of that, we mistakenly thought that the transcendence had disappeared for 10 minutes. No one knew where the words started from. It was like a flame, a small tinder in the dark night, a burning tinder. Even if it could instantly affect the perception of the transcendence in the world, it is still a terrifying and frightening technique. But maybe 10 minutes of darkness is the limit. That's right. Why not black hour? Why not black day? There is an end to the road, and there is a day when the sea will evaporate. 10 minutes might be the limit of this unknown ability. The burning tinder turned into a raging fire, as if it had become a new dawn. Shinryu did not appear during 10 minutes of darkness. They never fought directly. I believe that Shinryu is already an invincible force in this world. If this was called the Sword of Words, then it would be the sharpest sword. It was sharp enough to cut through the fear buried in the bottom of one's heart. It's also like breaking open the deepest fear in one's heart and showing it to others without reservation. Bai Jie sighed softly. Was it really that they were sealed for 10 minutes, or was it just that their senses were affected and they mistakenly believed that their strength had disappeared? Could it be that these guys really couldn't tell? It seems that some of us are really unwilling to wake up. The little celestial master of Mount Long who muttered to himself as he watched the servant girl walk with impeccable elegance. But there are all kinds of things in dreams. If one could dream for 1,000 years, who would be willing to wake up and see the reality? Senior, you gave me 30 years of reincarnation. Have I awakened or am I still in this reincarnation cycle? Sure enough, it's her. Mo Xiaofei muttered to himself. She. Zhuefeng had a complicated expression on his face. Purple Star looked at them in surprise, but she didn't know what relationship they had with the she they were talking about. Boss Luo had never deliberately erased the knowledge of the shop from those who had come in contact with it. For those who had come in contact with the shop, those people had already recognized him when he appeared in the forbidden world of the Transcendent Conference. Naturally, they wouldn't forget the servant girl who was always by his side. Someone asked them to deal with Kelowna Shinryu in a bakery in a picturesque town in Austria. The fool gently put down the tweezers in his hand. The crystal dice castle on the table was only half built at this time. He was looking at the projection on the wall. Shinryu is invincible, and it's beyond reproach. But if you want to do something, you can do it. He chuckled, because you don't belong to this world at all. He seemed to have known the result, so he turned off the projection, picked up the tweezers again, and gently picked up a crystal dice. Breaking a legend is a good thing for the club after all. He casually put the dice on the tower of the castle. You know this woman? Riaz's face was extremely solemn. Of course I know her. Mr. Poulin smiled at this time. She is also my student in name. Your student? Riaz couldn't help but widen her eyes slightly as if she was in disbelief. Then her heart moved. This is the person you recommended to me? This is not. Mr. Poulin smiled and said, the one I recommended is a male student, this is a female student. A male. Riaz frowned. Since the appearance of this mysterious servant girl, she couldn't calm down. She even tried to find any information about this mysterious servant girl from the information she had read in the subworld 003. But she found nothing. You seem quite afraid of my female student, Mr. Poulin suddenly said at this time. Afraid? Not really. Riaz shook her head. You haven't walked out of here, so you don't understand the power and mystery of the secret society. As one of the oldest organizations after the new generation of the dimensional void, we have nothing to fear. Even if the throne of the transcendence or the final apostle of the gate of truth is standing here, I won't be afraid. Even if I can't defeat them, but if I'm afraid when facing the strong, how can we roam the dimensional void? That's true. Teacher Pu Lin chuckled. I've never seen anything like a throne, so I can't give a reason for it either. As a person, I think my level still needs to be improved. She is really your student? Riaz suddenly asked suspiciously. In name. Mr. Pulin waved his hand and said, just in name. All of a sudden, Riaz developed a strong interest in the candidate recommended by Master Pu Lin. But she had to suppress this interest for the time being, because she had already arrived in front of Kelowna Shinryu. The golden flame was a bit messy, as if it was a fire blown by the wind, and it became more vigorous in the time it took to breathe. The true dragon of the divine land slowly descended at this moment and stepped on the ground with both feet. At this moment, she was only 3 or 4 meters away from Miss Maid. That guy asked you to come here? The true dragon of the divine land suppressed the anger in his heart at this time. There was a trace of uncertainty in his voice, and at the same time, it sounded a little stiff. But Long Shirua instinctively didn't want the conversation here to be heard by others. Therefore, under the seal of Shinryu's power, no sound could be heard here. No matter what kind of magic or psychokinesis she used, she couldn't hear anything here. Miss Long seems to be very careful. Miss Maid said casually. You haven't answered my question. Kelowna Shinryu said coldly. She had fought with this woman who inexplicably irritated her, and every time she fought with her, she was at a disadvantage. But now, she was standing here, standing on the ground. Master really loves you, young Mistress Long, Miss Maid said suddenly. So, he only asked me to come here. If he came here himself, Miss Long would probably feel uncomfortable. What about love? Kelowna Shinryu knew her heartbeat failed her just now. Humph, ridiculous. Long Shirua snorted. Anyway, you're the one who came here to make trouble for me. What's the difference between you and that guy? But I saw Miss Long was very happy just now. Miss Maid said suddenly. Miss Long, are you willing to stay with my master forever? What did you say? The true dragon of the divine land could not help but be stunned at this moment. His mind was in a daze, but his expression changed slightly in an instant. Miss Servant Girl took advantage of the empty space and stuck close to the true dragon of the godly land, but she didn't do anything. However, Kelowna Shinryu stepped back instinctively. Her whole body was tense and alert. Seeing that Miss Maid didn't do anything, Kelowna Shinryu couldn't help but get angry. You bad girl, did you do it on purpose? Miss Maid just stood there quietly. Although he was wearing a clown mask, Long Shirua could feel that he was giving off a wicked smile. Damn, bad woman. I'm asking Miss Long this question sincerely. Miss Maid chuckled. I can only hear your heartbeat when I come closer. I don't mean to offend you. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Ask the guy behind you to come out if you dare. I want to ask him what he means. Miss Long, you haven't answered my question. Miss Maid said softly. Are you willing to do it? The true dragon of the divine land instantly fell silent. The golden flames seemed to have dimmed a little. Why don't they move? It seems that they are discussing something, arguing about something. But I can't detect it. What are Kelowna Shinryu arguing with that woman? Their expressions are so serious. That woman is someone close to him. I don't know the reason for her actions this time. Right now, the true dragon of the divine land is most likely probing the other party's background. Maybe they are arguing because... Maybe it's because they are arguing about the world situation. Yes, it must be so. For someone like Kelowna Shinryu to argue about the world situation, it must be about the world situation. Lord Long, do your best. Even if it's an argument, you must be invincible. By Kelowna Administration's fans. Time passed by slowly. Kelowna Shinryu and Miss Maid were facing each other. They didn't move. However, the aura between the two women had been madly stirring up this world. Just by looking at each other like this, it was as if they had already overshadowed any kind of momentum. In a place where there was no sound to be heard, there was no thunder. Their confrontation was the thunder that rang out in the depths of everyone's hearts. Just now, when she was suppressing the entire team, Kelowna Shinryu didn't use her full strength. All of a sudden, a realization dawned in everyone's hearts. The true dragon of the divine land had truly pushed her strength to its peak. At this moment, Kelowna Shinryu's golden flame suddenly burst out. She didn't say anything and punched out. This question, let him ask me if he has the ability. Why should I answer you? Bad woman, if you want to fight, then fight. Don't appear in front of me like you're my wife. That's all I want to say. I want to steal your man, so what? Miss Maid didn't respond, but her action was the best response. In an instant, thousands of dancing black butterflies gathered around Miss Servant Girl. The butterflies were all condensed by black flames. They hovered in the air like a screen, completely blocking the golden flames. At the same time, Miss Maid waved her hands, and a crossed sword made of black flame appeared in each of her hands. She waved it. Last time in the inhuman domain, I wasn't in my best state. Kelowna Shinryu snorted. Today I'll let you know what's the power of Shinryu. Miss Long is too noisy. The master prefers silence. Miss Maid shook her head. So what if I have a loud voice? Kelowna Shinryu's heart was filled with evil fire. Loud voice. F***CK. Unlike you, you're like a piece of wood, it's boring to play with you. Huh. The black cross sword in each of her hands suddenly turned into 6. They were sandwiched between Miss Maid's fingers and shot out. The moment the black flame and the golden flame touched each other, they cancelled each other out, and the speed between them was getting faster and faster. They're fighting. They're really fighting. It seems that the negotiation failed. I saw that when Father Stella provoked them, Kelowna Shinryu didn't seem so excited. Could it be that this mysterious woman made some unreasonable request? Request? Didn't they release the black card? If they had any request, why didn't they say so at that time? Maybe there's a deeper meaning. To be able to make Kelowna Shinryu so excited, it's true. This is related to the world situation. 2 light shadows, one golden and one black, were using the sky as a stage. Just like an artist's brush strokes in the night sky, they outlined dazzling light strips. The sky wasn't falling apart yet, but the space was already shaking. The setting sun was completely hidden under the horizon. At the end of the earth, there was only a dim afterglow, as if it was struggling for the last time. Under the dim afterglow, there were stars and the moon visible to the naked eye, and under the stars there were cracks like lightning. The cracks in the space were broken. Like a thunder tree, irregular cracks flashed and disappeared. Space was cracking, and after cracking, it was quickly mended. Then, it continued to crack and mended again. Red flame meteorite, Stella's fist in the middle of the earth, 10 lions and 10 tigers' godly palm. None of them could be compared to these 2 women who directly cracked the space, which was more terrifying. The will of the subworld didn't descend? On the ground, the red-haired girl opened her eyes wide subconsciously. This means that it hasn't reached the upper limit yet. Mr. Poulin quickly threw out the logic. Riaz didn't care about her manners at this moment. Bullsh *T. These 2 women directly broke the stability of the space, and exceeded the upper limit. I suspect that the will of the manager of this subworld is blind. Teacher Poulin shrugged his shoulders and muttered, "What the hell are they arguing about? It really makes one curious." Mr. Cheetah was writing at a fast speed. The speed of the pages in the notebook in his hand was getting faster and faster. Natsuya Suzuki sat cross-legged at this moment. Their group of 3 was on a large rock, not far from the battlefield. Natsuya Suzuki crossed his arms and looked up at the sky. Not far away, the comments of the Transcendents who were watching the show drifted into his ears like annoying flies. But now, under the classic white hood of the KKK, Natsuya Suzuki couldn't help but show a strange expression. Kelowna Shinryu's Shinryu power prohibition was very powerful, but it wasn't at full strength. It still couldn't block Natsuya Suzuki's snooping. However, the more he listened, the more he felt that something was amiss. Why did it feel like these two women were fighting to steal a man? So, Natsuya Suzuki's thoughts had always been simple. The new master is actually quite a playboy? Maybe I shouldn't eavesdrop? I can't afford to listen, I can't afford to listen. I'll beat you to death, you flirtatious green tea. Ms. Long is really vulgar. It's like the fried side of an egg. Beachy. You're scolding me? You must be too agitated and misheard. Things seem to be developing in a strange direction. Boss Luo slowly sighed at this moment. Then, he looked at the huge deep hole that was created by the joint attack of everyone on Long Shirua and fell into deep thought. Hashtag PS1. Thank you for Boss Wudong's cuteness. Do you see this bottle of Bailon's chicken essence in my hand? It's for you. PS2, 1/1, PS3. Xiaoxi's character card is online at the same time. Go check in equals. Sad face. End of chapter. Chapter 2025. A black bolt of lightning swooped down and suddenly struck the ground. However, there was no sound of thunder, because this was not a real bolt of lightning. It was a crack in space. The aura of chaos rushed out from the crack in an instant. At this moment, all the transcendence around the black bolt of lightning couldn't help but shudder. It was as if something was peeping from the depths of the crack. It was like some kind of will came from outside the crack, from outside the world. In an instant, the transcendence closest to the crack seemed to see countless scarlet eyes and terrifying strange beasts through the cracks. However, the crack almost disappeared in the blink of an eye. Even so, the trembling feeling it brought when it appeared was still lingering. It was just a black bolt of lightning. However, under the night sky, the battle between Kelowna Shinryu and the mysterious woman. The battle between the two women could cause dozens or even hundreds of similar cracks to appear with just a wave of their hands. They suddenly had a feeling that if these two women continued to fight like this, perhaps the entire land would be turned into nothingness. The power to directly break space. This is Kelowna Shinryu's true strength. However, this mysterious woman is able to fight Kelowna Shinryu to a draw. At least, it's a draw so far. As for this mysterious woman, she was just a servant that day, standing behind him. Could it be that the 10 minutes of darkness isn't what we thought it was? It's just a deceptive method that we haven't deciphered yet to deceive everyone, but the real... That's impossible. The sky and the land began to tremble. Even the air seemed to be able to transmit vibrations into people's bodies at this moment. Not far away, the young heavenly master of Mount Longhu slowly stretched out his hand and felt the slight vibrations on his palm and the back of his hand. He muttered to himself, perhaps this is the so-called battle between transcendence. However, if this continues... At this moment, the young heavenly master of Mount Longhu couldn't help but lower his head and look at the land with a grave expression. At this moment, he felt as if there was something throbbing on the ground. It was an incredible power that could make people's hearts palpitate just by throbbing. This is? At this moment, the mystical sword immortal youth swiped his finger across his eyes, directly opening his Dharma eyes and staring at the ground. His expression became even grimmer. The legendary Xianyuan sword. In the Forbidden City's pet hospital, the little butterfly monster who was eating a rice cake suddenly raised her head and looked at the dust slowly falling from the ceiling. The water in the teacup suddenly rippled. The power of their battle has affected this place. Su Zijuan, who was lying on the sofa, narrowed her eyes. Although the power of prohibition can't seep in, it still affected the spontaneous movement of the earth. You can imagine how fierce the fight between these two women was. Sister Zijuan, is there no way to stop Sister Long and Miss Yuyi? The little butterfly asked nervously. Why should I stop you? This is me to begin with. This battle was bound to happen sooner or later, Su Zijuan said indifferently. You're still young. There are some things that you haven't figured out yet. Small? Not small, right? At this moment, Brother Shaoshan glanced at the little butterfly's figure and made a tut-tut sound. Then, Su Zijuan directly threw a cup at him. Brother Shaoshan caught it casually and then started to perform acrobatic. But the foundation of the pet hospital suddenly shook violently. The cup didn't catch and fell to the ground, smashing into pieces. On the sofa, Su Zijuan sat up and stared at the screen. The old witch is anxious, she's going to risk her life. A dazzling pillar of golden light appeared in front of everyone's eyes through the screen, and within this pillar of golden light that emerged from the ground, one could vaguely see the shadow of a sword hanging upside down. The earth shook more violently. No brush strokes, no description could completely restore the most realistic fluctuation of the earth. There was only one word to describe it: violent. Sure enough, the most powerful heavenly weapon of Xianyuan Palace appeared. The young sword immortal's eyes were fixed. He didn't even notice that when the legendary shadow of the sword appeared, his body of a true immortal of land that had been rebuilt after the last tribulation was still covered in cold sweat. The most powerful Shinryu of Kelowna. The most powerful heavenly weapon of Kelowna. 100 Calamity Taoist sighed. This is not the fortune of Kelowna. This is the most powerful force of Kelowna. It's the fortune of Kelowna to have this power. The young sword immortal snorted. 100 Calamity Taoist shook his head. The most powerful force, it's the most powerful because it has never been used. Uncle, don't you understand this? The way of Sword Immortal is not about reason. The young Sword Immortal shook his head. I don't need to understand it. That's true. 100 Calamity Taoist nodded. Uncle and I are like summer insects and ice, the three immeasurable. When the golden light beam shot out from the ground, Miss Maid stopped her attack and stood in the distance. She silently watched the true dragon of the divine land in the golden flame, which was as dazzling as the sun. This kind of light is somewhat dazzling, Miss Maid murmured softly. But her voice was covered by the wind in an instant. Kelowna Shinryu stretched his arm into the golden light beam and grasped the hilt of the shadow of the sword. Take out your weapon. Long Shirua calmed down at this moment with a dignified look. If you continue to use those toy swords, don't say I bullied you. Miss Long is so generous. Miss Maid smiled and said, but as far as I know, this sword doesn't seem to be complete. Even if it's only half, it's enough. Kelowna Shinryu waved the shadow of the sword casually. If it's complete, I'm afraid you'll die. Then, I'll do it. In a split second, a circular array appeared under Miss Maid's feet. The circular array was only 2 meters in diameter, but it expanded to hundreds of meters in diameter in a flash with lightning speed. It even included Kelowna Shinryu in its range. Numerous strange black flames were surging in the circular array. At the same time, a battle flag that was releasing black light and white light was slowly rising in the center of the circular array. Miss Maid held the flagpole directly. Since Miss Long's weapon is not complete, I won't open it for fairness. Who are you looking down on? The true dragon of the divine land's calm face once again put on a show. His tongue seemed to be able to tie a knot in the depths of his throat. Maybe it will open one day, maybe it won't. Miss Maid shook her head slightly. But when it opens, it means my master needs my protection. My master, my everything. Yu Yi said softly, remember its name, my lord is here. Damn you. Kelowna Shinryu couldn't say these words. If she knew how to say a word of love, she wouldn't have been single for so many years. But he was not happy. Not happy, not happy. I made a mistake. Again. This sword isn't Xianyuan. I bought it from a roadside stall a few days ago, but it's perfect for chopping green tea. Remember its name, you're the one I'm chopping. The evil dragon roared. I seem to hear its sorrowful cry in your hand. Miss Maid shook her head. I'll beat you until you cry. Brandishing the sword shadow in his hand, the true dragon's power instantly suppressed the black flames that were surging around him. He directly pulled out the sword and slashed over. There was no swordsmanship to speak of. He looked very much like a girl selling fish in the market with a fish knife. Although it was ugly, when she raised the sword, the sky cracked, really cracked. At the same time, Miss Maid raised the battle flag in her hand quietly. Beautiful. Instant light. Instant light. When the light appeared, Sister Lavinia, who was trying to save the unconscious paladin Wasco, suddenly raised her head. This is the aura of a saint. Everyone. This power is not something we can resist alone. Let's do our best. On the ground, Taoist Master Baijia, who was meditating and watching the battle, suddenly opened his eyes wide. He suddenly stood up, and his Taoist robe burst open. His shriveled body instantly expanded. Taoist Master Baijia rushed to the sky and raised his hand. The power of the phoenix, the immortal method, the undying realm of life. Instantly, Taoist Master Baijia created a huge, bowl-like barrier on the ground, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. In an instant, the transcendents from all walks of life gathered together and quickly approached the 100 Tribulations Taoists' realm of immortality. Then, they launched all kinds of strange moves and exerted all their strength. Supernatural masters. At least the supernatural masters who could come here could predict the future and determine life and death. Their hearts were clear. In the face of the true dragon of the divine land who went all out and the mysterious woman whose strength was unfathomable, the arrogance of these two women, if they were not careful, they would be doomed eternally. Is it too late? Taoist Master Baijia bit the tip of his tongue and forcibly activated the immortal phoenix bloodline in his body. Before Kelowna Shinryu's sword and Miss Maid's battle flag collided, cracks appeared on the undying realm of life. Finally, the sword and the flag collided. If I were you, I wouldn't watch him lose his feelings as a person because of this lousy shop. If you were me, how would you not know that my attachment to my master has long surpassed light, darkness, annihilation? On the ground, I can't block it anymore. The undying realm of life shattered instantly. The young sword immortal's body of a land true immortal collapsed. The edict of the little celestial master from Longhu Mountain shattered. Emo Xiaofei's psyche shield shattered. Zhuifeng's super golden body shattered. Shatter. The ice tower master spat out a cloud of blood mist. The three strongest people who challenged Kelowna Shinryu, the half-dead father Stella, Farrell, and Lamia's had just woken up. Their faces were pale, and they were swallowed by the energy that erupted between heaven and earth. Fire Cloud Evil God's entire arm exploded, and a sorrowful saber hum sounded faintly. His abdomen was heavily injured from the sneak attack, and now, he was even more injured. Onmyoji Shikigami fell in front of him one by one. He looked up at the light that was about to swallow him with a calm expression. What kind of great power are we facing? Run! The general manager is serious this time. It was the first time that Mr. Che Tian saw Natsuya Suzuki show such a panicked expression. Natsuya Suzuki kicked Mr. Che Tian and kid up violently without saying a word. At the moment when the light shone, he suddenly kicked a space crack in the air and immediately hid in it. Damn it! The void's secret treasure given to me by my elders. It can only be used 3 times. Where's Araya? Araya! Don't you care? Are they your mothers? Within the radiance, the red-haired girl let out a cry of being wronged, as if she was about to cry. Riaz pushed out her hands, and between her hands, there was a diamond-shaped crystal flashing with colorful light. Pulin-sensei was hiding behind Riaz, and was considering whether to hide under her skirt to be safer. It doesn't seem safe, Mr. Puluan lowered his head and muttered. In the end, the light swallowed them, who were purely spectators. When the same radiance arrived, Mr. Gareth only had time to turn around. He suddenly reached out and pushed Lancelot beside him. It seemed that in the end, he also wanted to push his companion further away, but he failed. At this moment, Lancelot was petrified. Her eyes suddenly regained their vigor, a special vigor. She muttered in the light, "Looks like it's necessary to give you a few more lessons on self-cultivation." The light couldn't swallow her in the end. It just melted and went around her. Right at this moment, she subconsciously frowned, because the radiance that had originally circled around her was now circling back. Not at all. The true state of these terrifying forces was that they were retreating from Lancelot's side, they were retreating back to their original position. In an instant, Mr. Gareth's body appeared again little by little. When he fully appeared, Mr. Gareth even maintained his charging posture. Under inertia, his body even took a few steps forward. "What the hell is going on?" Mr. Gareth turned around. The light that swallowed everything was retreating rapidly. Those who disappeared also reappeared one by one. Not only that, everything in front of them was like watching a movie played in reverse. While the destructive light was retreating, those who were destroyed and those who disappeared were also recovering at the same time. The shattered earth was restored, and green grass was everywhere. The deep pit was filled up. The stands that had long been broken and disappeared. All the venues of the Power Conference returned to their original appearance, brand new as before. In the end, the light that swallowed everything shrank to only a light spot and disappeared. Kelowna, Shinryu's sword shadow, and the mysterious woman's battle flag were each gently grabbed by a hand at this time. And the person who grabbed the sword shadow and the battle flag, he appeared. Time actually went back? On the ground, all the Transcendence minds were blank at this time, and they stared blankly at he who once brought 10 minutes of darkness to all the transcendence in the world. "Master," Miss Maid said softly. "You." Kelowna, Shinryu opened his mouth. Luochio, who was between them, just shook his head slightly at this time. His finger lightly tapped on the battle flag, and Miss Maid silently put away the battle flag. His finger lightly tapped on the sword shadow again, but Kelowna, Shinryu, snorted coldly. Boss Luo's finger lightly tapped on the sword shadow again. Instantly, the sword shadow turned into light spots and drifted in the air. Kelowna, Shinryu, glared at him and said angrily, "What do you want to do?" Boss Luo shook his head and looked at the ground below. On the ground, everyone was shocked. Their thoughts seemed to have slowed down countless times at this time. That was Kelowna's most powerful godly weapon, but it shattered with a flick of the finger? Even the invincible Kelowna, Shinryu, was no match for he. Even though he was evenly matched with the mysterious woman, he was no match for he in the end. He even restored everything that had been destroyed. It was just a matter of an instant, so this is the real terror that we are facing. It's as if we're from two completely different worlds. At this moment Luochio, who was in the sky, slowly spoke in everyone's ears. I said, at that moment everyone felt as if they were being stared at by a terrifying being. At this moment, even the roar of the soul couldn't wake them up from their paralyzed bodies due to fear. This wasn't a trick, nor was it an influence. This was real, their bodies, even their cells were terrified. That was the only voice. I said before, I don't want the city of exclusion to be damaged by the power of the transcendence. Boss Luo's voice sounded clearly. I thought that I had made it clear enough, but it seems that some people seem to treat my warning as a joke. Do you know that because of this conference, 19 houses in the city of exclusion have collapsed? 12 people were injured because of it, and there were a few car accidents. In addition, a pregnant woman was sent to the emergency room. Fortunately, she is fine. Everyone lowered their heads and didn't dare to speak. This level of destruction, if it was really a life and death battle between two transcendents, could be said to be insignificant. Such an insignificant matter attracted he? Fortunately, he didn't seem to be angry. However, with the change in Boss Luo's voice, everyone's heart, which had just been relieved subconsciously, suddenly became tense again. Not counting this last battle, before this, have you calculated how much land you have destroyed? Especially the battle between Shinryu and the challenge team in Kelowna, how much damage did you cause? How much of this is the land of the residents of the City of Exclusion, their former homes? What kind of influence did you bring to their lives in the future? How much damage did you cause? We will compensate you later. Fire Cloud Evil God stepped forward and said, "Moreover, for this conference, we have tried our best to choose places far away from the City of Exclusion to avoid Your Excellency's definition of support for exclusion." Boss Luo just glanced at him indifferently. Fire Cloud Evil God instantly turned into a bloody man. This was the power of just one glance. "Then, let me make it clear," Boss Luo said indifferently. "The exclusion area of the City of Exclusion is the living area of the City of Exclusion. In addition, the radius of 50 kilometers of the City of Exclusion is the same as the definition of exclusion. I have already demonstrated it once. I think I don't need to demonstrate it a second time. This time, I am here to tell everyone. The shop that I represent has the ability to fulfill any wish. As long as you can find the black card and find me." Boss Luo's voice stopped here. But Kelowna's Shinryu said angrily, "You damn profiteer! Are you here to advertise again?" Boss Luo looked directly at her. Kelowna's Shinryu's heart skipped a beat and she couldn't say anything. "This is the punishment for breaking the rules of the City of Exclusion," Boss Luo said directly. "I will imprison Kelowna's Shinryu for 1 day as a warning to others. Above." War Long Shirua opened her eyes wide at this time, but before she could say a word, she was already entangled by the cold light chains. "You? Let me go. Let me go. Then, Boss Luo grabbed one end of the chain and left with Miss Maid. Left gone, not good. Lord Long was captured by the Great Demon King. Chapter 2026. When the last ray of dim sunlight disappeared from the horizon, the venue of the Power Conference was lit up with all kinds of lights at the same time. This place was so bright that it was as if it was daytime. "This is the most magical scene that I've never seen in my dreams." In the stands, Auntie Rin pinched Rico's buttocks hard. After hearing the latter's cry of grievance, she was sure that it wasn't a dream. Rico didn't have time to ask why she was pinched. She just looked around in confusion. When Kelowna Shinryu and the mysterious woman had the last blow, she knew that it was impossible for her to come out unscathed in that situation. If it was light, she would be seriously injured and unable to take care of herself. If it was serious, she would lose her life. However, they were indeed safe and sound. Before all the destruction was reversed, she, Sister Ren, and Old Q were already safe and sound. "That Ms. Yu is a good person," Auntie Ren said suddenly. Rico and Old Q couldn't help but look at her in confusion. They saw Auntie Ren taking out a coat of arms. The coat of arms that Yu Xiaojie of the Magician Association gave during the interview. Auntie Ren said solemnly, "It must be this coat of arms that saved us. Even if this coat of arms couldn't save us, it seems that we will be fine. But it must be this coat of arms that saved us. So, that Ms. Yu really gave us a treasure." Old Q was startled at this time. Rico nodded in agreement. But she didn't think so in her heart. If this trash could block such a terrible power, she would live broadcast eating the earth. This power conference shouldn't continue, Auntie Rin suddenly said. Even if the assembly could continue, it would lose any meaning, for the various extraordinary champions present, that is. After the shocking battle between Kelowna Shinryu and the mysterious woman, no one dared to go on stage to show off their slight skill in front of an expert. Even Ahiyu appeared. He directly smoothed out all the damage caused by this battle. He broke the sword shadow of the Divine Land's most powerful heavenly weapon with a snap of his fingers, and grabbed the true dragon of the Divine Land as if he was holding a chicken. Even someone as powerful as Kelowna and Shinryu, who were like unconquerable mountains, could be tied up and taken away just like that, unable to struggle at all. He's not on the same level as us. There's nothing to compare. Yes, that's right, there's nothing to compare. That's right. It was as if I had seen a brand new path. So the end we saw was not the end. Beyond the end there is an even more vast world. Shinryu may be strong, but he is not invincible. Even if we're not as good as Kelowna and Shinryu right now, as long as we stick to our hearts and walk to the end and break through the end, there will be a day when we can do the same. What a joke! Should I say it's ignorance or inexplicable confidence? The red-haired girl shook her head. It's just that if they don't walk out, they will never understand how laughable their current confidence is. Isn't that a good thing? Pulin-sensei smiled and said, "Smile more confidently, and the world will become brighter. It's always gloomy and your clothes won't dry." Riaz did not say anything. She just glared at Pulin-sensei. This guy actually hid behind her and let a lady block the destruction? Pulin-sensei smiled and said, "Oh right, the student I recommended to you just appeared." Student? Riaz did not react for a moment, but then her heart skipped a beat. You mean? Yes. Pulin-sensei smiled and said, "The guy who came out in the end was the student I recommended to you." Riaz was stunned for a moment, then she exploded in anger. Are you kidding me? That person is your student. Look at you. Pulin-sensei could not help but be curious. You seem to know my student better than I do? How can I not know? Although I have never really met him, but based on the black card and the shop he mentioned, I know without thinking that he is. Riaz suddenly shut her mouth. What is he? Pulin-sensei asked. Forget it, this is not something you should know. Riaz shook her head. Unless you are willing to take over as the new scribe, I will not tell you too much. These are the most precious pieces of information that the secret society has spent a lot of time and resources to collect from various worlds. They are some of the most precious pieces of information. I see. Pulin-sensei lowered his head and thought for a while. He then looked up and said, "If that's the case, then I'll accept it." What did you say? Riaz was stunned. Just a moment ago, this guy's attitude was still very firm. Why did he suddenly change his mind? I suddenly realized that maybe the scenery outside is not bad. Pulin-sensei muttered to himself. I also need to plan the route before I travel. This guy, Riaz could not help but frown. What does this guy think becoming a member of the secret society means? A guide consultation? But is he really Pulin's student? Consultant Firecloud. How are you? The people from the agency surrounded the Firecloud evil god. Not only that, they even built a human wall, 3 circles inside and outside, completely protecting the Firecloud evil god. The Firecloud evil god was sitting cross-legged on the ground, his body was stained with blood, and he was obviously healing himself. But for some reason, the blood that burst out from the Firecloud evil god had now turned into the color of ink. At this moment, the Firecloud evil god suddenly vomited a big mouthful of blood, which was also black. But in the end, the blood returned to its original color. Consultant? I'm fine. The Firecloud evil god waved his hand and said weakly, It's just that the remaining poison in my body was forced out. After some rest, I'll be fine. Consultant, you're poisoned. Everyone was shocked. The Firecloud evil god pondered and said, Yes, I'm poisoned and I didn't even notice it. This should be because when I was stabbed, the poison had already entered my body. Yen Xiaoxi turned into a black-shelled creature and seemed to have lost her memory. Before she escaped, she successfully ambushed the Firecloud evil god. This matter was already known by the agency's senior agents present, but they did not expect that Section Chief Yen would actually kill the Firecloud evil god. The Firecloud evil god thought for a moment and said, Although that person used me as an example to warn all the Transcendents, but at the same time, most of the poison hidden in my body was directly expelled, which can be considered as saving my life. That's a fair trade. Consultant. Everyone wanted to say something. The Firecloud evil god shook his head and said, "Announce the end of the meeting, everyone go back. The meeting will be suspended from now on, and if there's anything, wait until Lord Long returns." Everyone was silent, now that the Kelowna Shinryu was captured by him. Although he was only imprisoned for a day as a punishment to warn others, but who knew, during this day, the Kelowna Shinryu would not be subjected to all kinds of inhumane torture? After all, they had seen him's power, but they did not know what him's temperament was like. If him was a ruthless person, then this one day of imprisonment would be a disaster. Let's go back. The Firecloud evil god sighed softly. This legend of Kelowna's martial arts world was now staggering, and his back was extremely bleak and lonely. However, this bleakness and loneliness were not only felt by the Firecloud evil god, all the transcendents in the Power Conference felt this way. Thus, under a strange atmosphere of silence, the various representatives of the transcendents began to leave quietly. They were waiting for the Kelowna Shinryu to return from his ordeal. After this, the media also left quietly. "Sister Rin, which home are we going back to now?" Rico thought for a while and asked. "What home?" Auntie Rin was stunned for a moment before she realized what she meant. She casually sent a message to Xiao Shi and then slowly said, "I'm a little tired. I won't be going to Xiao Shi's place today." In the territory of Britain, in an old school building of a university campus, inside the activity room of the Butterfly Society. This was the main body of the shop. Boss Luo did not move the shop back. At this time, Britain was in the period of suspension of all schools, so there were no students in the university campus except for a limited number of school workers. This was one of the reasons why the Butterfly Society did not have any wild guests recently. "Master, I can do it myself." Standing in front of Miss Maid, Boss Luo did not speak at this time. He just lifted Yu Ye's right hand. At this time, Miss Maid's right hand no longer looked like a woman's soft arm. It showed its original reality. It was a puppet's arm with joints, and at this time, there were many fine cracks on the entire arm. Even his fingers felt as if they would shatter with a light touch. Boss Luo's fingers gently stroked these cracks, making them slowly disappear. "I remember you told me a long time ago that if I fight with Miss Long seriously, I may have to change a new Miss Maid. Do you still remember what I said at that time?" Miss Maid did not say anything, just lowered her head. Boss Luo was here. He was probably the only one among all the creatures in the countless subworlds who could make Miss Maid bow her head. "Miss Sue's request is to defeat Miss Long," Miss Maid whispered at this time. "If I don't take it seriously, I can't fulfill the customer's request." "Is that really all?" Boss Luo asked casually. She raised her head and looked at the master's eyes, whispering, "That's really all." Boss Luo looked at her and said after a while, "After this body is repaired, don't repair it again." Miss Maid's eyes shook and she nodded softly. "No matter how brilliant the alchemy is, it's just an alchemy body after all." Boss Luo lifted Yu Ye's chin. "You used too much soul power this time. Have a good sleep." "What about Miss Long?" "Leave it to me." Boss Luo lowered his head and kissed Miss Maid's forehead lightly. In another exquisite room of the Butterfly Society, Kelowna's Shinryu was tied to a chair by chains. It was the kind of binding method that had dozens of circles on the chair. Long Shiruo wanted to move, but she could only shake the chair. After struggling for a while, she stopped and sat there as if she had accepted her fate. Suddenly, the sound of the door opening made the true dragon of the divine land, who was thinking about something with his head lowered, slowly raise his head. Her hair was messy. She looked at Boss Luo, who came in with a glass of water. She just looked at him silently. Boss Luo probably found it interesting. After putting down the glass, he took another chair and sat in front of Long Shiruo. She looked at him. She didn't want to say anything to see what he would say, but after a while, She was the one who couldn't hold it in anymore. She said faintly, "Did you cast some kind of spell on me? Why am I always so disappointing? Even I am starting to hate myself." Boss Luo handed the glass to her. "This is the concentrated Reiki liquid. You've drunk it before." "I don't want to say thank you." Kelowna's Shinryu turned her face away. Boss Luo said, "A customer asked us to fight, hoping that we can break Miss Long's invincible legend." Long Shiruo wanted to argue back no matter what Boss Luo said. But she didn't expect that Boss Luo would tell her the truth. She frowned and said angrily, "Who is it? It's not convenient for me to disclose the customer's information." Boss Luo shook his head. "Miss Long, you may have to inquire about it yourself. There should be many people who wanted to break her invincible legend. Or, as long as they had the intention, they would have the same idea. But the price should not be low, maybe even extremely high. Besides, even if she broke her invincible legend, what could she do? It was the shop that defeated her, not the buyer. Even if she was defeated by the shop, how could the buyer defeat her? However, as long as she knew about this, it would be very easy to inquire about the buyer, as long as she used the intelligence channel." Kelowna's Shinryu pondered and thought of many things. It turned out that he had to fight because of the business. It turned out that he didn't take the initiative, she just sat there quietly. After a while, Kelowna's Shinryu took a sip of the Reiki liquid and said unwillingly, "How's that bad woman? It seems that you came here after seeing her, right?" Although the last battle didn't have a final result, Long Shirua vaguely sensed something before she stopped. The black-hearted servant girl seemed to have some problems. She didn't know whether Miss Maid was hurt or not, but she felt that something was wrong. "Shouldn't I?" Boss Luo asked curiously. "You should." Kelowna's Shinryu gritted her teeth. "Why shouldn't you?" "You should." Humph. Gulp, gulp, gulp. She drank all the Reiki liquid in the cup and knocked the cup heavily on the table. Kelowna's Shinryu stood up. "I'm going back." "Miss Long, are you going back now? Isn't that obvious? Do you want me to be a third wheel here?" "I'm afraid that's not possible." Boss Luo shook his head. "I've said that I'll imprison Miss Long for 1 day. 1 day hasn't arrived yet." The true dragon of the Divine Land, who had just reached the door and put her hand on the door handle, frowned and stopped. She lowered her head and said after a while, "Why can't I resist when you want to imprison me? It's not good to imprison." Boss Luo nodded, "But it's also part of the customer's request. How about this, we'll change the imprison to another one." Kelowna's Shinryu didn't turn back, she just stood there with her back against the door. Boss Luo came behind her and said softly, "Miss Long, can you lend me 1 day?" Boss Luo put his hand on the back of her hand and gently opened the door, and then pushed the door open. Instantly, a ray of white light shone into Kelowna's Shinryu's eyes. It wasn't a dazzling light, it was a bright and beautiful sunlight. The door opened, there was a big green lake. The lake was in the valley. In the valley, there were mountains and clouds, it was like a paradise on earth. Kelowna's Shinryu's body trembled. "This is the Xianyuan Palace 2,000 years ago." Boss Luo whispered in her ear, "Miss Long, do you want to go down and take a walk?" Chapter 20:27. "Oh no!" She held her head with both hands and shouted with a voice of more than 100 decibels. At this time, Luo Dance was running back and forth in the living room. Sister Long was taken away by the boss. "Sister Zijuan, it's not good. It's not good." The little butterfly monster finally ran to Su Zijuan. At this time, the princess of the Xianyuan royal family hooked the little butterfly monster's mouth with her fingers and pulled it. She even plugged her ears with the fingers of the other hand. "I'm not blind, I can see. What should we do?" Luo Dance said pitifully, "I have never seen the boss like that. Is he angry?" "I don't know if he is angry or not, but I am angry." Su Zijuan frowned at this time and said, "How dare you fool me like this, damn it!" What she wanted was to shatter the invincible legend of Kelowna Shinryu in public. In this matter, Boss Luo did it. But in the current situation, Su Zijuan only expected the beginning, but not the ending. The invincible legend of Long Shiruo was indeed shattered. After all, she was taken away without any resistance. Wasn't it shocking enough? But the words of Profiteer Beast directly changed the nature of this matter. What was punishment? What was a warning to others? After this incident, could Long Shiruo still win a good reputation of, even if she was no match, she was willing to be humiliated in order to save the overall situation? She felt that she had lost hundreds of millions. Sister Zijuan, what did you say just now? What are you trying to do? I said the caramel milk tea you cooked is burnt. So, the little butterfly of the pet hospital ran out in a panic. As for Sister Long was fine. She always believed that the boss was a good person. This girl, has she always been like this? Sun Shaoxing suddenly looked at Su Zijuan at this time and asked, "Then what do you want her to be like?" Su Zijuan asked back. Sun Shaoxing shook his head and sat upright. "Anyway, I have finished watching the fight. Tell me, why are you looking for me? The number of times you're willing to take the initiative to look for me is pitifully few. I want you to sneak into the Xianyuan Palace and help me get something," Su Zijuan said casually. "I can help you get your things, but can you explain the word hidden?" Brother Xiaoxing's expression could not help but become strange. Su Zijuan said, "Why don't you just fight your way in?" Brother Xiaoxing opened his mouth and smiled bitterly. "I'm just Sun Shaoxing, not the great sage, okay?" Su Zijuan sighed and said with a sad expression, "Only you can help me now." How could Brother Xiaoxing withstand Su Zijuan's soft and weak appearance at this time? He slapped his thigh and said, "Good. This time, I, Brother Xiaoxing, will admit defeat. In the end, we'll have everything we want. Just do your best." Su Zijuan said, "I won't let you work for nothing. Whether it's successful or not, I will tell you some information about Heaven Sutra later." Brother Xiaoxing couldn't help but be stunned at this time. When he looked at Su Zijuan again, he was no longer obsessed with her, but a dignified and perverse look. Listen carefully, that thing is in a distant time and space. In a quiet mountain forest, there was a riot of falling petals. When the mountain wind came, there would be petals of various colors falling from the trees, falling into the palm. Then, the petals directly penetrated through the palm and finally fell into the mortal earth. No entity? Long Shiruo looked at the petals that fell under her feet. She seemed to feel pity, but not too much. If the entity appeared here, it meant that there were two Kelowna Shinryu in this era. This was impossible because Kelowna Shinryu was the only one. When her entity stepped into this time and space, the Shinryu of this era would probably sense it immediately. Then the collision would cause a chain reaction that even she didn't dare to imagine. "Entity is also fine," Boss Luo said at this time. Long Shiruo was stunned, frowning, and said unbelievably, "Aren't you afraid that it will affect the history later? As long as the wind from the butterfly's fan doesn't spread out." Boss Luo smiled slightly. "Not all variables are enough to change history. For example, if this tree drops one more petal or one less petal, does Miss Long think that it will affect the people who pass by later? In fact, he won't even find out." Kelowna Shinryu was silent, then snorted, "I'm not good at science." "This isn't science, it's just my personal opinion." Boss Luo shook his head, then said, "Do you want to walk around with your physical body?" Long Shiruo shook her head. "That's it, it's good enough that I can come back and take a look. I don't want to go back and find that there are more things in my head." Boss Luo said softly, "Today, Miss Long is in charge." Kelowna Shinryu looked at Boss Luo with a strange expression, even frowning. "Why did you suddenly send me back here and treat me so well?" "Maybe it's because I want to know more about you, Miss Long," Boss Luo smiled. "In this era, Miss Long hasn't taken over as Shinryu yet. What's there to know?" Long Shiruo shook her head and said with disdain, "I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. I'm just a little girl, What's so special about me? When I was young, I was no different from other people, I just happened to be born in the Xian Yuan family. Boss Luo smiled. At this time, where would you be, and what would you be doing? When exactly was this? Long Shirua was silent for a while. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, It should be 3 years before you took over as Shinryu. At the Medicine Valley over there. Long Shirua thought for a while and pointed at a mountain in front of them. If I remember correctly, I should still be learning about medicine from Chichi Kamaya. Chichi Kamaya, that old bastard, must be sleeping. Come, follow me, I'll bring you to the Medicine Valley. There's a herb garden I planted in the past. Perhaps it was because the true dragon of the divine land had returned to the old haunt of this space-time. There was a hint of lightness and excitement in its voice at this moment. No matter what would happen after leaving this place, Long Shirua decided to put it behind her and enjoy every minute and second of this moment. She began to talk about what she saw on the road. No matter what they encountered on the road, she could recite many things as if they were her family treasures. In her words, it seemed that even a small tree by the roadside had its own story. Whitey! Suddenly, Long Shirua shouted in surprise. She stopped under a big tree and looked up at a small hole in the tree. In the small hole, a snow-white ferret poked its head out and looked down. It seemed to be looking at Kelowna Shinryu. It can see me? Long Shirua asked doubtfully with a hint of surprise. Boss Luo shook his head. It can only see the insects on the ground. Its name is Whitey? Long Shirua nodded slightly. I found Whitey on the mountain. Its mother was dead, probably killed by the godly eagle on the mountain. At that time, Bai Ling was just born and was very afraid of strangers. Then it must like Miss Long very much, Boss Luo said softly. Long Shirua looked at the little ferret that slowly retracted its head. I don't know if it will like me very much. I only know that it is very similar to me. It also lost its mother when it was young. Can it really not see me? Boss Luo shook his head again. Let's go to the front. Long Shirua withdrew her gaze and said. Boss Luo said, You can stay a little longer. We have plenty of time today. No need. Long Shirua looked at Luochio and smiled. If I look at it again, I won't want to leave. As she said this, she quickly walked to the front. Then she turned around and waved at Luochio with a smile. Hurry up! She walked and stopped on the mountain path. Suddenly, she asked, If you could go back to the time when you were young, what would you want to do? I don't think I can go back. Boss Luo thought for a while. At least I can't go back now. Kelowna Shinryu said with disdain. Isn't your shop supposed to be omnipotent? Boss Luo just smiled and didn't say anything. Long Shirua shrugged at this moment. She seemed to be in a good mood and said, Do you know what I want to do now? What do you want to do, Miss Long? She showed a sly smile and walked directly to Boss Luo. I'll hit your head. As she said this, she raised her hand and gently patted Luochio's forehead. Pa! He patted it so hard that he could even hear the sound of skin hitting against skin. How could I touch it? Kelowna Shinryu stared at her hand on Luochio's forehead blankly. Isn't there a physical body? We are physical bodies, so are everything here, but they are staggered. Boss Luo explained casually. Kelowna Shinryu swallowed her saliva and quickly withdrew her hand. I didn't mean it, I just thought. It doesn't matter. Boss Luo looked at her. It won't shrink this time. She didn't know whether to be angry or amused. She recalled the time when she tried to find out the details of the shop. She was transformed into Longer, which was not a good memory. On the way, she didn't even want to be nice to this guy who didn't understand romance. She kept silent as if she was angry. Even if you apologize to me, it depends on my mood. She made up her mind. That's right, she was determined. Ms. Long, let's wait for a while. Boss Luo suddenly said, The scenery here is good. Scenery? Kelowna Shinryu shook her head. The scenery here is just average. You'll know what a good scenery is if you walk a few steps forward. Let me tell you, there's a moon pond in front, which is much more beautiful than here. Boss Luo still shook his head. You can see as much as you want, Long Shirua said and walked forward, disappearing in an instant. When she walked to the moon pond, she widened her eyes and looked at the green pond water with a strange expression. There was a figure in the pond water. It was a young girl, a budding young girl who hadn't grown up yet. The young girl was playing in the pond water, playing with the water. This quiet and secluded Medicine Valley seemed to be the girl's private paradise. The little lotus showed her sharp horns, and her 2 little legs were paddling in the water. Kelowna's Shinryu looked at the clothes at the edge of the pond with a dark face, as if struck by lightning. Don't look! She suddenly thought of something and turned around abruptly, but found no one behind her. She thought he would catch up with her, but he didn't. Did he stop on purpose? The true dragon of the divine land was slightly taken aback, and then a smile appeared on his face. What a treacherous guy! The girl in the pond didn't know anything at this time. After playing for a while, she dived into the water and caught a 3-meter-long strange fish. She walked out of the water and put on her clothes. Then, she carried the big fish into the forest. She even talked to herself about how to get this big fish to eat. Did I bear when I was young? She lowered her head and smiled bitterly. After a long time, she sat cross-legged on a big rock by the pond, looking at the calm moon pond, and gradually lost her mind. She didn't know how much time had passed. This is the moon pond, it's really a beautiful place. It was Boss Luo's voice. Kelowna's Shinryu didn't look back and said lazily, Only now? The good scenery is gone, you've lost a lot. Boss Luo smiled. It's not a loss to tour the Xianyuan Palace with Miss Long, you only know how to say nice words. Kelowna's Shinryu spat in a low voice. Then she suddenly took a deep breath and stood up. I won't let you lose. She turned around with a bold look in her eyes. Boss Luo opened his mouth in surprise. Kelowna's Shinryu reached to her lapel and unbuttoned her collar. Boss Luo turned around after unbuttoning one button. Don't turn around, just look at me, Long Shirua said loudly. You said that I'm in charge today, did you forget? I want to go down and swim. Her clothes slid down one by one. In the end, she looked at Luochio calmly and pointed at her heart. Look, am I beautiful? She didn't wait for Boss Luo's answer. After asking this question, she took 2 steps back and directly jumped into the moon pond. Splash! Water splashed everywhere. At this time, she already had a physical body in this era. The moment she fell into the water, she once again felt the coolness from 2,000 years ago. Miraculously, she couldn't even feel any Shinryu's power at this time. Everything related to Kelowna seemed to have been stripped from her body. The water splashed and scattered the sunlight. The water splashed and scattered the time. Amidst the scattered water shadows, she watched as the figure that was disturbed by the splashes slowly floated to the surface of the water. She felt that her heart was about to jump out. Hello! She put her hands in front of her mouth and said loudly, I'm Xianyuan Shirua, what's your name? Luochio, I'm Luochio. Chapter 2028. When the sky turned dark, Long Shirua caught 2 normal-sized fish from the moon pond. She said that she should try her cooking. This might be the only thing she could do. As for whether it would affect this time and space if she roasted the fish to eat after entering the water, Boss Luo had said that the passers-by wouldn't know if there were more or less petals. It would be the same even if there were 2 more or less fish in the moon pond. When it was almost evening, a thin mist appeared around the Xianyuan Palace's Medicine Peak. A bright moon appeared in the pond. It wasn't a reflection of the moon in the sky, but a shining crescent moon stone in the pond. That was how the moon pond got its name. These are starfish. Of course, they aren't real stars. They just emit starlight at night. She pointed at the Milky Way around the pool and said with a smile, in the legend of Xianyuan Palace, starfish is the favorite food of the mysterious lady, so the Yellow Emperor brought some back from the Milky Way beyond the 9th heaven and raised them here. Mysterious lady? Boss Luo looked at Miss Long's face that was red from the firewood and asked curiously. Her hair wasn't dry yet and her clothes were clinging to her body. Her eyes were bright and her teeth were white. She didn't look as sloppy as before. It's just a legend. Long Shirua didn't dare to look at Boss Luo's eyes. She looked away and focused on roasting the fish. She said casually, "Anyway, I've heard of this legend since I was young. Until now, I haven't found any evidence to prove it. Although Xianyuan Palace looks like a paradise, the people of Xianyuan Palace have been living here for generations. It's quite boring. I think most of the legends were created by the old people to pass time. However, the children like to listen to them." Boss Luo didn't say anything. He just used a branch to make some firewood. He was already familiar with the survival skills in the wild. However, mysterious lady. When Taisetsu was undercover in the Transcendence Organization, Fushi Throne seemed to have mentioned this name unintentionally. Daz was a person who did things very carefully. He did not miss any information inside the Transcendence Organization. He reported all of it. "What are you thinking about?" Miss Long suddenly asked. Boss Luo said casually, "I'm just curious about how Xianyuan Palace was built." Kelowna Shinryu was shocked. "You can't know that easily." Boss Luo was very down to earth. "I need to spend money too. If Miss Long can tell me, of course I can save some money." "Stinky." Kelowna Shinryu was disdainful. "This isn't some shocking secret. How much is it worth? You've done so many things, how can your expenses be low? Why don't you spend?" Boss Luo was the dragon was Luo was chuckled S's was. Mississippi flirt, Long Shiro murmured, but no one knew what she was muttering. Later, she acted as if she didn't hear what she had just said. While fiddling with the grilled fish, she said indifferently, "You should know that Xianyuan Palace has been fighting against the demons in the deep sea these years." "I've been to Underwater City." Boss Luo nodded. Long Shirua also had information about Underwater City in her hand. It was submitted by Underwater City's Prince Riaz when he contacted Kelowna's management. Fire Cloud Evil God naturally didn't dare to hide such an important matter. Therefore, he sent a copy to Long Shirua almost at the same time. The deep sea was the battlefield between Underwater City and the Siren Tribe. However, the Siren Tribe has been annihilated. Kelowna's Shinryu looked at Boss Luo with a strange expression. "You didn't do this, did you?" The person who annihilated the Siren Tribe was Louis 39. However, why did Louis 39 do this? It was probably to collect enough black orbs, to lure Sin, and make a deal with Boss Luo. This matter was indeed driven by the shop, so Boss Luo didn't deny it. He just reminded Mississippi Long that the grilled fish had to be flipped or else it would be burnt. "It's better if it's burnt." Kelowna's Shinryu rolled his eyes and continued, "Although the demons in the deep sea have always existed, the Xianyuan Palace's initial purpose wasn't to fight against these demons. Instead, it was to fight against immortals." Boss Luo's interest was piqued. The path to becoming an immortal wasn't broken in the past, Mississippi Miss Long said. At that time, the world was still an environment with abundant spiritual qi. Whether it was Taoism, demons, or martial artists, they were all in a state of blossoming. Even the 100 schools of thought had people who entered Taoism with reason and were waiting to ascend the heavenly gate. At that time, divine prefecture could be said to be as bright as the stars. But later on, a small number of people found out that this bright era came at the cost of rapidly consuming the spiritual energy of the divine land. They believed that the spiritual energy in Kelowna was unbelievably huge. However, this amount had a limit. It couldn't be regenerated, and the more it was used, the less it would be. As more and more people attain the Tao and become immortals, it means that the divine land will decline even faster. Prosperity is just the surface of desolation. Later, those guys who had become immortals came back. They seemed to have suffered heavy losses outside, so they actually planned to come back to plunder. Long Shirua shook her head and snorted. Those guys were no different from bandits. In order to prevent the common people from suffering, my ancestor, the Yellow Emperor, gathered a few like-minded companions and established the Xianyuan Palace. The original purpose was to snipe this group of shameless bandits. This war continued. The previous Shinryu also suffered irrecoverable injuries in this war. Thus, he had no choice but to find a new vessel for the power of Shinryu. Long Shirua shook her head and said, "Shinryu can't die. It's the power of Shinryu that can't die. It's not me, the previous Shinryu, or even the first Shinryu." "How was the path to immortality cut off?" Boss Luo asked. Long Shirua thought for a while and said, "The first emperor cut it off." "Did you see the spiritual energy seal on Mount Tai?" "At that time, I had just taken over the power of Shinryu, and I hadn't reached my peak yet. Kelowna was in a very dangerous situation. However, at this time, Shi Huang appeared out of nowhere and unified the world. He forcefully performed a ritual on Mount Tai and cut off the dragon vein of the divine land. He used his mortal body to cut off the path to heaven and annihilated the immortals. But unfortunately, the first emperor also ran out of energy in the end. I once wanted to gather his true spirit, but I didn't succeed. After a few decades, I was too lazy to do it. I didn't expect to meet him in the end." She glanced at Boss Luo with a meaningful look. Boss Luo reminded her that the fish was ready. Long Shirua shook her head. She picked up a small piece of grilled fish and tasted it. She seemed to be satisfied and handed it over. "Be grateful. Other than my father, you're the second man in this world to eat my grilled fish." Boss Luo smiled slightly. Under Miss Long's anxious gaze, he slowly took a bite and chewed it carefully. Miss Long's narration also continued some of the things that happened before. The principle of the subworld didn't allow living beings to transcend. Those who wanted to transcend would have to go on the path of fighting against the will of the subworld. For example, Nan Xiaonan was the one who walked out from the destruction of the world after it was rebooted. Or, they paid a huge price to reverse yin and yang to get a chance. Lai Kaixing of the Cotton Cloak sect was like this. He carried the sin of killing millions of living beings and transcended. Therefore, the existence of the path of immortalization was very unreasonable, but it had to be said that its existence was reasonable. Kelowna's path of immortalization had always referred to Penglai. Penglai treasury was the inheritance of Prince Cicero of the Eternal Empire. However, the first emperor didn't really cut off the path of immortalization. He only cut off the path to Penglai treasury. Penglai treasury was still in good condition. Even now, the Penglai treasure vault was still in good condition, and its internal operations were as usual. However, Boss Luo sealed it personally. Because of some agreement with Cicero, the Penglai treasure vault would not be opened again. Boss Luo wouldn't open it himself, unless the student of Prince Cicero in the treasure vault could achieve the success that he wanted despite the fact that he would never be able to succeed. Or, one day, the restrictions of the shop would disappear. Otherwise, this would be an eternal cycle. Or perhaps, someone would find out about the existence of this restriction and would pay an even greater price to remove this restriction. Night, 2 grilled fish were eaten without them noticing. Long Shirua took some water to wash her hands. She stretched and lay down on a big rock, using her arms as a pillow and listening to the sound of the mountain wind. The fire was still flickering. Her lazy voice sounded again. The path of immortalization was cut off. At first, the Tao demons in Kelowna went crazy and searched everywhere for a way to break the heavens. Bringing chaos to the world was like a small goal for 3 years. Later, Xianyuan Palace and I had to put out fires everywhere. Long Shirua yawned and said, "After a few years of chaos, those guys accepted the fact that the path of immortalization was cut off. After a few more years, some guys passed away while sitting cross-legged. Some guys committed suicide in despair. Until now, there are only a few left. By the way, the little old man Baijie is one of them. Those people never came back? Boss Luo climbed up the rock and sat beside her casually. Long Shirua shrugged and said, "Of course they want to come back. But so what if they come back?" At that time, my Shinryu power was fully activated. If one came, I would beat one. If two came, I would beat both of them. Now, Xianyuan Palace still has one imprisoned there in that position. But it's not in this era. She yawned again and casually pointed at a tall tower in the mountains. Devil Suppressing Pagoda. After that guy was imprisoned, it changed its name to Immortal Suppressing Pagoda. In the past few hundred years, they didn't come again. I also wanted peace. As she spoke, her voice became softer and softer. If I didn't meet you, my days would be even quieter. You're really a bad guy. Her voice became softer and softer. Boss Luo lowered his head to look at her. Long Shirua was curled up with her face facing him. Unknowingly, she seemed to be sleepy. Really, if I say I'm willing, she seemed to have said something, and then there was no sound. She had really fallen asleep. It's been hard on you today, Boss Luo said softly. Hundreds of flowers suddenly bloomed on the rock. The flowers gently supported her, and she slept more comfortably. At this moment, a faint light slowly gathered in the moon pond. A girl's shadow stood on the water surface. She looked at the big rock with a trace of confusion on her face. The girl said softly, "Araya, the administrator of subworld number 003. Greetings." Boss Luo waved his hand and smiled. "We've met in the future. A flower, a wood, a sand, a stone, and even a speck of dust. These small things were too few to be discovered. But it didn't mean that they wouldn't be discovered. For example, Araya, who had all the data of the world." The girl wasn't surprised by Boss Luo's words. She just nodded. "I didn't intend to touch the things here," Boss Luo said apologetically, "but it's my friend's birthday today, so I'm a little willful." Araya turned to look at the sleeping Kelowna Shinryu, frowning. But it was just a frown, and then he said indifferently, "The abnormal data has been corrected." Boss Luo thought for a while. "Delete this from your database later. Don't let the future you remember this." "Confirm command generated," Boss Luo said again. "Is there a shop in this era?" 003 Araya said expressionlessly. "There are no related records in the database." Speculation 1, it existed, but it also received the command to delete. Speculation 2, there is none for now. Boss Luo said again, "Where is the Penglai treasure house? I mean, it's in this era." "Unsearchable, ancient 003 Araya shook his head. "The system attributes are incompatible, unable to locate." Boss Luo nodded. To put it simply, the Penglai treasure house system was more like a private server created by Cicero. "There's nothing else," Boss Luo said finally. "You can go back, I'll leave soon." "Confirm." The girl disappeared in the moonlight as if she had never been there. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. Kelowna Shinryu, who was sleeping on the flower blanket, waved her hands and shouted like a ghost, "Eat my friendship face-breaking punch! I'll beat you until you cry." "Are you crying?" After shouting, Kelowna Shinryu went silent again. Seems like she had a good dream. He didn't know when Miss Long and Miss May became friends. "It's menstruation." Lizzie pushed open the door in front of Auntie Ren, then she was dumbfounded, because the lights in the house weren't turned on. There was no sound in the kitchen. That was to say, Luochio and Yu Yi weren't at home at this moment. There was only a note on the table, saying that they went to buy something. At this time, Auntie Ren received a text message from Luochio. "What did he say?" Lizzie asked anxiously. Auntie Ren glanced at it and said happily, "Nothing, he just went shopping for a long time and couldn't make it back before the curfew. He will stay in a hotel tonight and come back tomorrow morning when the curfew is lifted." Lizzie's eyes suddenly turned dark. "Then what are we eating tonight?" "I'll cook." Auntie Ren shrugged and immediately rolled up her sleeves. "Come on, It's time to show you the real skills. I don't want to. I want Yi to come back. I want Luochio to come back. I want. Close the door. Chapter 2029. How long had it been? She had never had such a deep sleep. All the tiredness had disappeared. Her spirit had never been so good. She felt that she could sit in front of the computer and play games until she even forgot to eat lunch. When the morning sun shone, her eyes slowly opened in the bustling world. The fragrance of flowers was intoxicating. She had a habit of staying in bed, so she didn't want to wake up so soon. The firewood was still there. The cool morning of Yao Peak was blocked by the heat of the flame around the big rock. She finally got up and found the figure leaning on the rock under the big rock. He had been guarding the firewood all night. Obviously. In fact, he didn't need to do it himself. Long Shirua thought. This guy always likes to do things that are strenuous and unrewarding, and he seems to enjoy it. His appearance. She turned over, lying on her stomach among the flowers on the rock. She held her chin with both hands and poked her head out, carefully looking at the sleeping face below. Suddenly, she stretched out her hand but failed. She thought for a while and had to give up. She simply stayed with him quietly until the firewood gradually burned out. This was the branch and leaf of an ancient pine tree that only existed in Xianyuan Palace. It had a special fragrance when it was lit, which couldn't be found outside. She felt that she suddenly fell in love with this smell. All of a sudden, her thoughts started to run wild again. She must have been crazy yesterday. How could she do that kind of thing? It was unbelievable. She was not Luo Dance, the butterfly monster who would go into estrus. When the throbbing of that moment finally dissipated like ripples at the end of the water after a night's sleep, what followed was not only anxiety but also confusion. She didn't even know what the final result would be between them. Moreover, this guy would leave soon, leaving the world with Kelowna Shinryu. He had said that he would only leave for a few months. It would be over after a few months of playing games. Don't worry. At this time, a little person appeared on the left shoulder of the true dragon of the divine land. He sat upright and said as if he was comforting her, so she nodded in agreement. A few months? You've been with that black-hearted woman for the past few months? A couple flying away together? You can do shameless things every day, okay? On his right shoulder, there was also a small person with sharp teeth and a small horn on his head. The moment he appeared, he sneered. Thus, her loosened brows furrowed into a knot. Unknowingly, the two figures on Kelowna's left shoulder and right shoulder began to quarrel about this topic. Unknowingly, Kelowna's Shinryu was no longer sleepy and had lost his good sleep. Stop arguing! How annoying! The evil dragon roared. The minions on his shoulders disappeared instantly. Kelowna Shinryu, who was still angry, faced Boss Luo with a confused look on his face. Sorry. I didn't mean to wake you up, she said subconsciously. Boss Luo stretched and smiled casually. It's okay. It's about time for her to wake up. Miss Long is in such high spirits today. She could only smile sheepishly. Are you hungry? Shall I go and catch 2 more fish? This was really the only thing she could do. Suddenly, a melodious bell sound came. Long Shirua was stunned. She stood up and looked at the direction of the bell sound thoughtfully. The bell kept ringing until it rang 9 times before it stopped. Long Shirua suddenly said, So today is Xianyuan Palace's Grand Ceremony Day. Is it a very important day? Boss Luo asked curiously. Long Shirua nodded. The Grand Ceremony is the day when Xianyuan Palace opens the Fountain of Youth once a year. On the day of the Grand Ceremony, the 3 most outstanding people in Xianyuan Palace will be given a cup of Fountain of Youth. Fountain of Youth? Boss Luo was even more curious. Long Shirua jumped down from the rock. Normal warriors will gradually weaken as they grow older and eventually die of old age. If their martial arts can't reach godhood, they can only live for 100 or 200 years at most. But for the people in Xianyuan Palace, as long as they are given the Fountain of Youth, They can easily live for 300 or 400 years. Those with good aptitude can even use the power of the Fountain of Youth to break through their martial arts cultivation and live for more than 1,000 years. Long Shirua shook her head. This Fountain of Youth is connected to Kelowna. Ever since Emperor Shi Huang sealed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the production of the Fountain of Youth decreased a lot. Once a year, it gradually became once every 3 years, once every 5 years. Now, Xianyuan Palace hasn't held a grand ceremony for almost 500 years. The last time, it took him nearly 50 years to condense half a cup of the Fountain of Youth. Later on, the spiritual energy declined further and the grand ceremony was never held again. Do you want to go and take a look? Boss Luo suddenly asked. Since it's a grand event in Xianyuan Palace, you should be able to see many people that Miss Long used to know. She hesitated for a while. Even though she had Shinryu's power and was invincible in Kelowna, she couldn't turn back time and go back to Xianyuan Palace 2,000 years ago. How could she refuse this kind of revisit? How could she refuse to see those people and things that had long disappeared in the long river of history? I'll be more and more lost. You know what? She looked at him, nodded slightly and said, I want to go. 2,000 years ago, in Xianyuan Palace, there were far more Gong Sun family people than in Xianyuan Palace 2,000 years later. But comparatively, there were fewer spirit creatures in Kuan Clan. At the moment, Kuan Clan in Xianyuan Palace hadn't developed for a long time. Therefore, only a small part of the spirit creatures in Kelowna had surrendered. This was a grand ceremony, not a celebration. In the square in the main hall of Xianyuan Palace, people from all kinds of families and clans gathered, but dared not to make any noise. Incense and drums were burning. The square was solemn and quiet. In front of the stairs in the square, 3 outstanding members of the Gong Sun family, 2 men and 1 woman, raised their heads and puffed out their chests, waiting for the grand ceremony to begin. Needless to say, these 3 people were the main characters of this grand ceremony. The members of the Gong Sun family who would be given the Fountain of Youth. In the main hall of Xianyuan Palace on the stairs, all the leaders of the various clans were waiting respectfully like ministers. In the main hall, a white-robed man was standing with his hands behind his back. It's about time. Go and prepare. The white-robed man said indifferently. Behind the man, a barefoot girl wearing a ceremonial robe and a Dragon King mask gently knelt and nodded a big ceremony. After the ceremony, the girl didn't leave immediately. What's the matter? The white-robed man asked in a low voice. Father, if the ceremony ends early, do you want to stay for dinner? The girl asked softly. Today, no need. The white-robed man said expressionlessly, after the grand ceremony ends, I'll return to the deep-sea battlefield immediately. Is the war in the deep sea so urgent? The girl asked worriedly. The white-robed man said, those guys seem to want to provoke the demons in the deep sea to launch a large-scale attack to weaken the strength of Xianyuan Palace. Those guys. The girl lowered her head and didn't say anything. After a while, she slowly stood up and said, it's the auspicious time. Father, I'm going down. The white-robed man simply nodded. He took a few steps forward and walked to the railing, appearing in everyone's sight. Instantly, on the huge square, all the clans knelt down and shouted his name. In the unified and orderly voices, Long Shirua looked at the white-robed man in the main hall with a complicated expression. Everyone's shouts covered her soft voice. Father, you can go up. Luocho said in a low voice, you can see more clearly. Long Shirua shook her head, no need. He'll leave soon. Later, a general will bring news about the strange movement in the deep sea, and he'll leave. It's good enough that I can see him. In fact, if it wasn't for the grand ceremony, he wouldn't be in Xianyuan Palace today. He hasn't been back for more than half a year. Is Palace Master Xianyuan often not in Xianyuan Palace? During this period of time, Xianyuan Palace has been fighting a lot with the immortals. Long Shirua sighed and said, "Every day, there are clansmen of Xianyuan Palace who need to be buried." Not long after the grand ceremony, a war broke out. On one hand, Xianyuan Palace had to deal with the demons, and on the other hand, they were ambushed by the immortals. This is the most serious damage Xianyuan Palace has ever suffered since it was founded. She shook her head. "Let's not talk about this. It's all in the past anyway. How about it? Do you have any other places you want to go? Or do you want to finish watching the grand ceremony here?" She's about to go up on the stage. Boss Luo smiled casually and pointed at the altar in front of them. It was a strange experience. She was looking at her past self, and the person beside her was also looking at her past self. Kelowna Shinryu was trying hard to recall something. She thought back to the grand ritual that happened 2,000 years ago. When she walked up to the altar as a priestess, did she feel any strange gazes? "What's there to see?" Kelowna's Shinryu muttered. "You've seen everything that should be seen. Isn't it enough?" "So beautiful," Boss Luo praised softly. On the altar, the barefoot girl in the priest's robe seemed to be stepping on the clouds. The girl's sleeves danced in the wind, and the fragrance of her clothes and body wafted in the air. Her slender and soft body was like a red lotus swaying in the autumn mist. When her body and arms danced slowly, she looked like a cloud that was just blown out of the valley by the wind, and she looked like a soft willow branch in the cool breeze. Her body was light and soft. "You!" At this moment, Long Shirua saw that Boss Luo took out a golden camera and started to take pictures like an old mage. Kelowna's Shinryu felt more and more embarrassed, and she couldn't stand the atmosphere anymore. "I'll walk around. You can look as much as you want." She ran away from the crowd in the square and ran into the Xianyuan Palace's main hall. She didn't stop after she ran into the main hall. Instead, she walked into the depths of the palace. She was very familiar with this place, and soon, she walked into a courtyard. This was the place where she lived when she was young. Since it was the grand ceremony, the maids who were in charge of taking care of her daily life were gone. Only a little maid who was in charge of the courtyard was sleeping in front of the door. Long Shirua sat in a pavilion in the courtyard and stared blankly. She touched her face and felt a little hot. "That bastard really didn't follow me?" She looked at the entrance of the courtyard and waited for a long time, but no one came. She murmured to herself, and then she suddenly had a flash of inspiration. "Does that guy like little girls?" She sucked in a breath of cold air as if she had discovered something. The more she thought about it, the more it seemed to be the case. She still remembered how she was sealed and turned into Dragony because she tried to test the shop. She still remembered that in the basement of the villa at the foot of Mount Tai, that guy was unreasonable and grabbed her and slapped her, but it's over, Kelowna's Shinryu's face was pale. The more she thought about it, the more scared she was. The two little people on her shoulders appeared again, and seemed to be fighting with each other. Suddenly, the little maid who was sleeping in front of the door said in a panic, "Master Tortoise. This servant knows her mistake. This servant didn't mean to sleep. Master Tortoise, please don't punish me." Kelowna's Shinryu stopped her wild thoughts and looked up. The person fighting in front of the courtyard was Chichi Kamaya, who didn't look much younger than 2,000 years later. How old Chichi Kamaya was still a mystery. "Little girl, what's wrong with you? Sleeping is a need for the body, and you are still growing. Sleep enough, and your body will grow up." Is that so? This old man has a body training method. "Little girl, take it. It's fate to meet you today." "Thank you, Master Tortoise." The true dragon of the divine land in the pavilion rolled his eyes when he saw the little palace maid kneeling down to express her gratitude and the old dirty turtle from 2,000 years ago reaching out to help her up. Chichi Kamaya told the little maid to leave after chatting with her for a while. Then, he walked into the pavilion. Long Shirua thought she was exposed, but Chichi Kamaya just sat down in the pavilion and closed his eyes. Kelowna's Shinryu shook her head. Then, as if she remembered something, She looked down at Chichikamaya and smiled. She remembered that Chichikamaya was here to send her red eggs. Every year, Chichikamaya would send her red eggs. She was born on Xianyuan Palace's grand ceremony. Every great sacrifice was also her birthday, and at the end of every great sacrifice, the clansmen would celebrate for the outstanding clansman who had obtained the immortal spring water. She was used to this. As the princess of the Xianyuan royal family, she should prioritize the clansmen, the affairs of the palace, and the lives of the people. They are talking about this and that should. Suddenly, Chichikamaya opened his eyes and stood up. He bowed deeply to the front. Greetings, Palace Master. Long Shirua's mind went blank. She turned around. She saw the white-robed man walking slowly towards her. He was carrying a basket of red eggs. Father, at night, the Xianyuan Palace was brightly lit. The situation at the front line was tense, and the atmosphere in the palace had been low for a long time. Today was the grand ceremony, and new outstanding clansmen got the fountain of youth. Naturally, they would drink to their heart's content. Because after today, these 3 outstanding clansmen would be sent to the battlefield in the deep sea. The celebration was also a farewell. In the depths of the Xianyuan Palace, in a quiet courtyard, a young girl walked in quickly. When the young girl saw Chichikamaya sitting in the courtyard, she smiled happily. Grandpa Turtle, I knew you would be here. I cooked some red eggs for you. You haven't eaten anything for a day. Come and eat. Okay. The young girl rushed into the pavilion and lifted the cloth covering the basket. When she saw the basket full of red eggs, her eyes lit up. The young girl felt that this basket of red eggs was more delicious than all the other delicacies outside. Your Highness, eat slowly. It's all yours. However, I recently discovered that eggs are indeed more nutritious than ordinary meat. Eating more can help your body grow faster. Okay. Then I'll eat more. I want to eat all of it. She sat on the roof of the small building in the courtyard and silently watched the young girl and Chichikamaya in the courtyard. She would smile from time to time and turn her face away from time to time. When she turned her face away, Luochio was standing in front of her. It was a place where the lights were waning. She watched as he slowly walked over and whispered, "Should I leave?" She didn't know how this day was calculated. But obviously, a day had passed since she came to the Xianyuan Palace 2,000 years ago. It was even longer than that. No rush, Boss Luo said lightly. Then he sat down and his eyes naturally fell on the courtyard below. Did you know it long ago? Long Shirua suddenly asked. Know what? Boss Luo showed a curious look and asked. Nothing. Long Shirua shook her head. She hugged her knees and didn't want to think about anything else. Happy birthday, Boss Luo suddenly said. Long Shirua heard this and looked up at Boss Luo. She saw a red egg in the middle of his palm. I took it from the basket. There won't be a problem. Boss Luo smiled. She stared blankly for a moment, then suddenly pounced on Luochio and pressed him on the roof. Big drops of tears dripped down his face. Do you know that even if you want me to do something now, I can't help but agree to it? I have a hard time holding back, okay? Make a wish. Luochio wiped the tears on her face and said gently, Make a wish. He looked at her like this. She also looked at him like this. Chichikamaya's voice came from the courtyard. It asked, Your Highness, make a wish. What is your wish this year? I hope that the world will be peaceful. The people of Kelowna will live and work in peace. The common people won't have to suffer anymore. The girl stood on the stone bench in the pavilion. She raised her head and covered her mouth with her hands. Her childish voice echoed in the night sky. Her voice trembled. I want, Master, it's time. Long Shirua heard a voice that was so inharmonious. She felt like her brain was about to explode. She looked up. Under the night sky, Miss Maid stood there elegantly. She had a flawless smile on her face. Oh, Miss Long is still here. Miss Long, are you not feeling well? Or you can't walk? Do you need me to help you? F*CKU. Let's fight. The evil dragon's roar resounded in the sky above the Xianyuan Palace 2,000 years ago. Chapter 2030. They couldn't fight, it was just a show. If they really wanted to fight, they would have fought to the end in the Power Conference. They couldn't fight then, and they couldn't fight now. Kelowna Shinryu and Mississippi servant girl stopped after several rounds of fighting in the sky above Xianyuan Palace. Today is my birthday. I won't argue with you ignorant women and children. Kelowna Shinryu sneered. Mississippi servant girl thought highly of this Shinryu. It seemed that this Kelowna Shinryu became more powerful and didn't look defeated anymore after the trip to Xianyuan Palace. But his words were still provocative. Mississippi servant girl chuckled, walking slowly to Boss Luo, taking out a handkerchief to wipe the traces on his face. Long Shirua glanced at it, turning her head and snorting disdainfully, but didn't continue to speak. She didn't know what to say. At that time, the atmosphere was just right. She even thought it was perfect, and she almost said something because of the throbbing of her heart. So angry. One day, I will have to fight seriously. I can't swallow this anger in my life. Peaceful coexistence is impossible, not in this lifetime. Boss Luo quietly snapped his fingers at this time. Long Shirua knew it was time to leave. She looked down at the girl in the courtyard and suddenly smiled. Kelowna Shinryu's cold face seemed to be covered with a layer of gentle silver light under the moonlight. Goodbye, the old me, she thought. The space shook slightly. What came into sight was the city of Forbidden, which was dimmed because of the curfew. A feeling of being separated from Kelowna Shinryu spread in her heart. From 2,000 years later to 2,000 years ago, and then from 2,000 years ago to the present, that guy celebrated her birthday for her. She smoothed her hair and turned around. Boss Luo and Mississippi servant girl was standing together and Mississippi servant girl was half a step behind them. Thank you for today. Kelowna Shinryu seemed to figure out something and suddenly walked over with a smile. I didn't make a wish just now, I'll tell you now. She didn't care about Mississippi servant girl, but only Luachio's reflection in her eyes. I want you to celebrate my birthday with me next year, just the two of us. Since you like to serve customers, I don't lack of money. Boss Luo was a bit surprised, but he nodded with a smile. That's it, I'm tired today. The true dragon of the divine land stretched himself at this time, but he looked refreshed. Without looking at the servant girl next to him, he walked directly into the night. After a while, the servant girl suddenly smiled and said, Miss Long looks a little like Miss Zijuan. Or rather, Miss Zijuan has too much of her shadow. Boss Luo chuckled and looked at Miss Maid. Shall we take a walk? All right. However, a day had already passed. He wondered what had happened on this day. Standing in front of the pet hospital, Long Shirua suddenly frowned. Although she had inevitably lost her powers in the city of abstinence, there seemed to be quite a lot of people at home right now. The reason for his judgment was that there were many pairs of shoes in front of the door, and there was also a sour smell. Kelowna's Shinryu couldn't help but pinch his nose in disgust as he stepped over. As soon as he opened the door, many people rushed in and crowded the corridor. Long Shirua was startled by the scene in front of her. Before she could ask in detail, a figure jumped into her arms. Sister Long, you're finally back. You scared me to death. Aren't I fine? Look at what you said. Kelowna's Shinryu shook his head and rubbed the little butterfly monster's head, looking at the scene in front of him. In addition to Gui Qianni and the representatives of Xianyuan Palace who stayed in the pet hospital, she also saw the old man, the 100 Tribulation Taoist and several elders of the Taoist Association. The big shots of the 4 spirits of the monster clan were also there, including Zixing of the Greedy Wolf clan. But she didn't see Zhuifeng and Mo Xiaofei. There were also some marginal figures. Kelowna's Shinryu couldn't remember their names at once. But to Long Shirua's surprise, she even saw the Ice Tower Master of the Magician Association here. There were many people who came to inquire today. I sent them away. Otherwise, I'm afraid your place wouldn't be able to accommodate them. Chichikamaya's expression was obviously more relaxed now. Anyway, it's a good thing that Lord Long is back. Kelowna's Shinryu was about to say something, but he heard the big shots of the monster clan with grief and indignation. Master Long Jun fed the demon with his own body. It's really tiring. We're too weak and couldn't resist, so Master Long Jun suffered such humiliation. We're ashamed. Huh? Fed the demon with his own body? What the hell? Kelowna's Shinryu's eyes widened. That's right. That demon was so arrogant that it angered both humans and gods. It's a pity that Lord Long. Wait, I didn't do anything. Hateful. Hateful. Really hateful. If I wasn't there at the time, I would have killed myself to show my sincerity. Even if that demon destroyed my soul, I would never let Lord Long suffer such humiliation. The one who killed herself to show her sincerity. Was she the one who blocked the entrance of the pet hospital and shouted slogans every day? What are you talking about? Shinryu fed the demon with his own body and saved Kelowna and the world from the abyss of suffering. Even if Shinryu is the purest goddess in the world in my eyes. You motherf asterisk curs. The true dragon of the godly land felt something was wrong as she listened. She trembled with anger and her face darkened. Instantly she shouted furiously, "Get out! Lord Long, calm down, scram? If you don't scram, I'll kill you. Lord Long, calm down. You must stay calm at this time. We'll be considerate of you, Lord Long. Hey! Lord Long, don't hit me. I'll leave right now. Master Long, you need to recuperate well. Don't harm your body." Kelowna's Shinryu really chopped people. She snatched the sword from Chichikamaya's hand and pulled it out. "If I hear fed the demon with his own body again, I'll exterminate your entire clan. Lord Long, calm down. Calm down. We know what to do." Scram! Panting heavily, the true dragon of the divine land was so cold that even the sword in her hand was shaking. She turned around and looked at the old man, the Ice Tower Master, the big shots of the monster race and Taoism who had not left yet. "Since Lord Dragon King came back safely, I'm relieved. I'll go now." Baijia's president laughed, but actually, he passed by Kelowna's Shinryu in fear. The other Taoism elders followed closely behind him. "We've also bid farewell, Lord Dragon King." The big shots of Monster Clan looked at each other and bid farewell. Looks like the Lord Dragon Monarch must have suffered a lot when he was captured. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chased after us like a madman. Could it be that something irreversible had happened? The big shots of Monster Clan left with a heavy heart. Ice Tower Master heaved a sigh of relief and walked over silently. She whispered to Kelowna's Shinryu, "If there's something you can't tell others, you can come to me. We're all women. I can understand." "You don't understand." Ice Tower Master even patted Long Shirua's shoulder and gave her a gentle hug. "Don't think about anything. What you need most now is a good rest. You'll get better." Kelowna's Shinryu sighed dejectedly. She couldn't clear her name this time. She didn't say anything else. The old Turtles group was originally here to stay, so only the old geezer was left. There were still some people from the agency, but they didn't dare to come in and were waiting outside. Lord Long Fire Cloud Evil God was about to speak. "Shut up." Kelowna's Shinryu glared at him and raised the sword he just put down. "I haven't said anything yet?" Fire Cloud Evil God glanced at Chichikamaya. The old dirty turtle acted as if he didn't see anything and looked up at the sky. Fire Cloud Evil God helplessly shook his head, cupped his hands and said, "Originally, I wanted to ask Master Long for more information about that demon. It seems that I came at a bad time. I will come again another day." "Wait." Kelowna's Shinryu frowned and looked at Fire Cloud Evil God. "That guy isn't a demon, and he's not as scary as you think. Just follow his rules and don't try to test his bottom line." Fire Cloud Evil God frowned and cupped his hands again. Lord Long, can you tell me more so that the agency can deal with it in the future? No. Kelowna's Shinryu said indifferently, that's all I have to say. Remember my words, don't try to test his bottom line, whether it's your actions or your thoughts. Fire Cloud Evil God nodded solemnly and then left with a heavy heart. Long Shirua didn't care whether he really listened to her or not at this moment. Finally, it's quiet. Chichi Kamaya said with a smile, Lord Long, Miss Dance has worked hard for the whole afternoon to prepare a table of food for you. Don't waste her good intentions. Long Shirua nodded silently and looked at everyone, saying softly, let's go in first. The dining room was already filled with sumptuous food. Long Shirua suddenly remembered that there were 2 guests, so she asked directly, aren't those 2 weird guys here? Luo Dance thought for a while and said, yesterday morning, Mr. Ajuan and Miss Leia said they were going to attend the power conference, but they haven't come back yet. I don't know where they went. Grandpa Tortoise said they were all capable people, so they should be fine. Kelowna's Shinryu nodded casually and lost interest. But she saw a basket covered with cloth on the table. Kelowna's Shinryu glanced at Chichi Kamaya subconsciously, only to see it smiling without saying anything. When the cloth was lifted, the basket was filled with bright red eggs. Long Shirua directly sat down. I'm really hungry today. Dance, give me 2 boxes of white eggs. I'll eat and drink to my heart's content tonight. Okay. Hearing that, the little butterfly monster ran out quickly. At the back door of the pet hospital, Luo Dance opened the door carefully and looked around, but she saw a small figure leaning on the side. Sister Zijuan, don't you go in? I'll quarrel if I go in. It's boring. Su Zijuan said casually, I'm leaving. Remember, don't tell anyone that I've been here. Yesterday, before Chichi Kamaya came back, Su Zijuan left early. She didn't go somewhere, but just hid somewhere. Sister Zijuan, where are you going this time? Luo Dance couldn't help but ask curiously, when will you come back? Su Zijuan didn't answer, but just stood on tiptoe, pinching the little butterfly's face, smiling, I'll come back when you get fatter. It was so difficult. Sister Long said she was too fat, but Sister Zijuan said she needed to get fatter. Who should she listen to? Seeing Su Zijuan disappear alone at the end of the alley, Luo Dance stayed for a while before returning. I've brought the wine. Everyone. The news of Shinryu's return spread like wildfire in Kelowna. It couldn't be concealed. After all, there were too many guys gathered in the pet hospital. A lot of information was transmitted, but it needed people to interpret it carefully. Fire Cloud Evil God hurriedly returned to the temporary command center of the administration. In the past day, although the arrest of Shinryu in Kelowna was a major event, other than that, a lot of things happened in the city of Abstinence. Are you sure they've left? The evil god of Fire Cloud sat in front of a table, frowning as he looked at one of his subordinates. There was a report about the 13 vampire clans delegation leaving without saying goodbye, which was delivered at noon. It was unknown what method the representatives of the 13 clans used, but they actually disappeared from the hotel under the watchful eyes of the Administrative Bureau. He had just received news from an agent sent back from overseas, saying that the new Grand Duke of the clan, Baligan, had returned to the Inhuman Domain. And at this time, the 13 vampire clans in the Inhuman Domain seemed to gather together intentionally. This time, the 13 vampire clans left without saying goodbye. Are they planning to give up the summit meeting? The subordinate agent said solemnly, I heard that the Magician Association intended to deal with the 13 vampire clans. The owner of the Ice Tower even initiated a summit meeting in her name, intending to expel the 13 vampire clans from the Inhuman Domain. I'm afraid that Bailey left in such a hurry to deal with this matter. After all, the territory of the Inhuman Domain is more important. Fire Cloud Evil God frowned. No matter what the 13 vampire clans do, the Magician Association should be the one having a headache. It won't affect Kelowna much. Since the 13 vampire clans left without saying goodbye, then they automatically gave up joining the Transcendence Association. This matter is settled for the time being. Next. On the table, there was more than one document about the 13 vampire clans. Chapter 2031. Other than the sudden departure of the 13 clans, the rest of the ambassadors didn't make any moves. However, after this power conference, the Kelowna Authority received questions from many countries. The consensus was, is this power conference appropriate or not? Even if the power conference wasn't held, it had already been held, and it was already over. The only reason they were protesting now was because they wanted to overturn the results of the power conference. Although the power conference was stopped after Shinryu was taken away from Kelowna, if the results were approved, the Kelowna region would be the biggest winner of this power conference. Also, many Transcendents were heavily injured during this conference. The subordinates smiled bitterly. Most of them came from the people who challenged Lord Long in the end. They said that even though this was a challenge, they should follow the principle of friendship. Lord Long was too heavy-handed, and they want to be compensated accordingly. I hate politics, Fire Cloud Evil God said coldly. There's nothing to talk about with a bunch of shameless politicians. If they want compensation, I'll let them send their people to me. I'll beat them to death one by one, and then I'll personally deliver my life to them. Kill me if you can. Consultant, what do you mean? The subordinate was startled. Why did Consultant Fire Cloud look like he ate gunpowder? Was it because of Section Chief Yen? That's what I mean. Fire Cloud Evil God said directly. Tell my words to those who want compensation, word for word, word for word. We've laid our cards on the table. If you want peace, then be quiet. If you don't want peace, then start a war. The power conference has already been held, and the fights have already been fought. Don't they know who has the bigger fist? This probably wasn't what the higher-ups wanted, although Fire Cloud Evil God was only a consultant, and there were still directors and vice-directors above the authority. They were all leaders in name. The authority's real power was still in Consultant Fire Cloud's hands. I understand. The subordinate nodded slightly. If all the Transcendents in the world were to rebel, no one would want to see that happen. However, if all the Transcendents outside of Kelowna were to rebel, that would be a different matter altogether. After this power conference, the structure of the world was undergoing drastic changes. This change did not appear directly on the surface, but was madly colliding in the dark. Once it was finalized, the world would probably usher in a complete reshuffle. Advisor, when should we reconvene the summit meeting? This was really a meeting full of mishaps. It had already been interrupted twice. Fire Cloud Evil God pondered for a moment and said, reopen the day after tomorrow. The day after tomorrow, will it reopen? In the hotel room, after Mr. Gareth received the notice from the Kelowna Authority, he fell into deep thought. After the power conference hastily ended, they directly returned to the hotel and did not go out for the entire day, but that did not mean that they did not inquire about the outside world. However, for the entire day, the outside world was calm and peaceful, as if nothing had happened. It was so quiet that it made one feel vaguely irritated. The news of Shinryu's return from Kelowna had arrived an hour ago. Mr. Gareth thought that the meeting would be reconvened in a few days, and as expected, he immediately received the notice. At this time, Lancelot came out with a basin filled with blood-stained gauze. Through the gap in the door, Mr. Gareth could see the situation inside. On the bed, there was a person who was bandaged all over. Farrell. During the power conference, Farrell took a blow from Shinryu from Kelowna. Although it was unknown how much power Kelowna used when Shinryu fell to the ground, it was obviously not his strongest power. Kelowna Shinryu's strongest attack should have been when he went all out against the mysterious woman holding the war flag. Even so, when Mr. Gareth and Lancelot brought Farrell back, Farrell's heartbeat was very weak, All the blood vessels in his body were ruptured, and he was in a state of severe blood loss. However, Farrell still managed to survive. His tenacious vitality shocked the two young 12 knights. Compared to the other two of the three strongest, Farrell's injuries were obviously the most serious. After the power conference, it was unknown where the voices came from, but people referred to Lamia's, Father Stella, and Farrell, who challenged Shinryu as the three strongest. To be injured to such an extent, this title is more like a mockery. Mr. Gareth could not help but shake his head at this time. That is not a power that can be resisted by a mere human. At this time, Lancelot said expressionlessly, "At least, in my impression, there has never been a power that can be compared to that in ancient Britain. I heard that the first Night King was very strong." Mr. Gareth said coldly, "Legend has it that the inherited armors of the 12 knights were all designed with the Night King's armor as a blueprint. The Night King's armor, the King's sword, to us it is also a legend. No one has seen it." Lancelot shook her head. "It is not these external objects that are strong, but each person. Gareth, my transmission power comes from Lancelot, and a Lancelot is known as the most powerful of the Knights of the Round Table. However, no matter if it's you or me, do we have the power to fight back against Farrell? He is not human." Mr. Gareth laughed bitterly. "What we are facing is also not human." Lancelot said seriously, "Strictly speaking, the Kelowna Shinryu is not human. Even the one who appeared in the end, who turned back time and easily captured the Kelowna Shinryu, do you think he is still human? I heard that the Transcendents in Kelowna call him the Devil." Mr. Gareth smiled and said, "Do you know, the Oi Devil in the Kelowna language refers to the kind of person who has done all kinds of bad things, angering the heavens and people, and is the worst kind of person. But I think that he didn't do anything bad. This time, if he didn't make a move, I'm afraid that we would have died in the final battle between the Kelowna Shinryu and the mysterious woman." Whenever he recalled the last moment when he was swallowed by the light, Mr. Gareth's heart was still quite fearful. He couldn't even feel the pain of that kind of death. Lancelot said indifferently, "In Eurasia, the Church has dealt with many witches who have awakened extraordinary powers in the name of heresy, demons, and the fallen. Even if these witches only used witchcraft to farm or treat people." Mr. Gareth shrugged and immediately said, "Lancelot, what were you thinking at that time?" "I'm talking about the moment of death." Mr. Gareth did not see the scene where the light bypassed Lancelot. He only thought that Lancelot was like him, who had been revived because of the time reversal. "I wasn't thinking about anything," Lancelot said indifferently. "I didn't have time to think." To be exact, Lancelot felt that she had lost part of her memory. But this memory was very short. It might only be a few seconds or 10 seconds of blankness. She told herself that she might have been dead, once under the swallowing of the light. It was not until the time reversal that she was revived again. That was why there was this short blankness. At this moment, some movement suddenly came from the room inside. Mr. Gareth and Lancelot frowned at the same time. The two of them rushed into the room as fast as they could, only to see that the quilt in the room had been lifted. However, Farrell, who should have been unconscious on the bed, was gone. They looked at the window of the room at the same time. The wind blew the curtains, and the window had been opened. Walking to the window, they saw a lift used to wipe the glass of the outer wall of the hotel descending rapidly. Surprisingly, the unconscious Farrell was on the platform, and there were two other figures. At this time, Lancelot's eyes narrowed. Without thinking, he directly pulled out a silver pistol from his waist and fired at the descending platform. However, when the bullets landed on the two figures that were trying to capture Farrell, they only produced sparks. At the same time, one of them suddenly raised his head. His face was actually wearing an ancient bronze mask. This person raised his hand. In his hand was a gun-like weapon. At this time, a grenade was directly shot out, directly into the room through the window. "Be careful," Mr. Gareth shouted and quickly pushed Lancelot aside. Then, there was a loud bang. Then, a tongue of flame directly sprayed out from the window. The glass of the nearby room was also shattered at the same time. The hotel's fire protection system was activated in an instant. A harsh buzzing sound echoed in the hotel. Mr. Gareth and Lancelot appeared in the lobby of the hotel. They rushed out of the lobby. However, in the deserted streets after the curfew, they could no longer find the two mysterious people who had taken Farrell away. Damn it! Was this place also attacked? An agent from the administration clenched his teeth and hammered the wall at this time. Mr. Gareth frowned. Also, what do you mean? The agent from the administration had to quickly say, before the attack here, the place where the Black Order and the church stayed was also attacked. The identity of the attackers is unknown, but it seems that they wanted to take away the seriously injured Lamias and Father Stella. Including the attack here, these 3 attacks took less than 5 minutes. So, the other top 3 were also taken away? Mr. Gareth was suddenly shocked. No. The agent shook his head. The guy who attacked the church was about to take Father Stella away, but he didn't expect Father Stella to suddenly wake up and fight them off. As for the Black Order, Lamia's was also taken away. However, she was later brought back by a mysterious person. However, the mysterious person didn't say anything. After leaving Lamia's, he quietly left. Only here. The security work of the hotel is the responsibility of the Kelowna administration. Mr. Gareth immediately took the initiative and said, I request that the Kelowna administration can give us a reasonable explanation for the night mechanism. What a wily old fox. The agent could only helplessly say, Mr. Gareth, we won't shirk our responsibilities. If there is any news, we will inform you as soon as possible. At the same time, we will also strengthen the security work here. Please wait patiently. I hope so. Mr. Gareth nodded with an unpleasant expression. He also knew that this was the most he could do. At this time, Lancelot quickly drew something on a piece of paper and placed it on the table. This is what I drew based on my impression. The attackers all wore this kind of mask on their faces. I hope it can help. Thank you very much. The agent reached out and accepted it. His voice was filled with gratitude, but after a glance, he was not very grateful. Good Lord, it turned out that this valiant and beautiful female knight was also a soul artist. Both of you. The agent took a deep breath at this time. We will arrange for the 2 of you to stay in another place temporarily, in case the other party attacks again. Please follow me first. That was the only way. Mr. Gareth and Lancelot looked at each other and nodded. Investigate carefully. The other party may not have gone far. At the crossroads of the city, more than a dozen vehicles from the administration were lined up here, and the agents, at this time, were also searching around under the command. At the same time, an ambulance was also parked here. It was filled with agents from the administration inside and outside, as well as combat nuns from the Black Order diplomatic group. The person lying in the ambulance was the new chief of the Black Order, Lamias. The situation was like this. A few mysterious people suddenly broke into the hotel and took Lamias away. This immediately alerted the agents stationed in the administration and the combat nuns of the order. However, when they followed all the way here, they saw that the car driven by the mysterious people who took away Lamias had flipped over at the crossroad. In the car, Lamias was lying safe and sound, but the mysterious people who took away Lamias were nowhere to be seen. It seemed that someone made a move to intercept the car and take away the robbers. Don't leave any clues behind. Search hard for them. The commander's voice roared at the crossroads. This night, 3 places were attacked in succession, which was undoubtedly a slap to the face of the Kelowna administration. On the rooftop of an office building at the crossroads, a middle-aged man wearing a fisherman's hat was silently watching the crowd below, as if he was thinking about something. At this time, a fierce-looking young man wearing ripped jeans walked over with a can of green tea in his hand. It was Natsuya Suzuki. Natsuya Suzuki was leaning on the wall at this time. He looked down and asked curiously, "Do you know that woman? Why did you ask me to save her? Do you like to pry into your employer's privacy?" The middle-aged man, Mr. Che Tian, asked indifferently. "Well, as long as you pay." Natsuya Suzuki shrugged, then pointed behind him. "What are you going to do with these trash, my employer?" Only then did Che Tian-sensei turn around. 3 guys with strange masks on their faces were stacked on the ground. Next to them, the child, who was raised as a pet by Suzuki, was poking at their masks with a curious look on his face. Che Tian-sensei walked up to the 3 robbers and removed their masks one by one. Then, he couldn't help but frown slightly. "Oh, these 3 guys." Natsuya Suzuki was shocked, staring at the 3 men on the ground. Then he patted his head. "They are triplets." "I don't know if they are triplets or not," Che Tian-sensei said indifferently, "but I know of a guy who looks exactly like them, and that guy's name is Gongsun Shiu."